Chapter 5747. Facing the flustered and exasperated Xiao Sou, Bailey Hongzhuang's face was as calm as still water, a stark contrast to her cloudy and unruffled appearance. However, the words that came out of her mouth were still tit for tat, without the slightest bit of concession. "Your contracted beast is just like you, weak as hell." After saying that, Bailey Hongzhuang no longer paid any attention to Xiao Sou, turned her head, and continued to look at the mysterious and calm lake water. Obviously, now was not the time for them to fight. The pavilion in the middle of the lake was the most important. As for the real confrontation, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. After suffering a setback, Xiao Sou was also very unconvinced and wanted to say a few more words, but was pulled back by Jun Lingxuan. The crowd saw that after Jun Lingxuan whispered a few words into Xiao Sou's ear, Xiao Sou nodded slightly, and even though her face was still filled with unwillingness, she still did not say anything. Xiao Sou really can't be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang now. The arrogance from before has been completely extinguished. That's right, when I saw Xiao Sou in the past, she was always the center of attention, and no one dared to go against her. But now she is being suppressed by Bailey Hongzhuang everywhere. The wheel of fortune has really turned. Lower your voice. Don't be heard. We can't avoid trouble when the time comes. Even though the crowd's voices were very soft, but Xiao Sou could still vaguely hear some of it, and instantly the anger in her heart flourished. "Lingxuan, why don't you let me continue to argue with her? Now, everyone is laughing at me." Looking at Xiao Sou's indignant look, Jun Lingxuan patted the back of her hand. "Don't be angry. If we continue to make a fuss now, once we fight, wouldn't it be troublesome? There are so many people here. I just noticed that the number of cultivators from our clan doesn't seem to be as many as theirs, and we don't have the advantage. Moreover, have you forgotten Master's teachings?" Only then did Xiao Sou regain her senses. Before leaving, Shuyi not only taught them the things they needed to pay attention to in order to break through, she also specifically reminded them that unless it was unavoidable, they should try their best not to fight with these two people. As of now, they did not have an absolute chance of winning. However, as long as they cultivated with their master for a long enough time, it would not be a problem for them to defeat the two of them in the future. Although it was very difficult to achieve this, they also understood in their hearts that what their master said had a certain degree of truth. It was all for their sake. "I understand." Jun Lingxuan nodded slightly. "Revenge is a dish best served cold. Once we break through to the Radiant Moon realm, it will be much easier to deal with them. Do you know what realm they are at now?" Xiao Sou lowered her voice and asked. "They definitely haven't broken through to the Radiant Moon realm. If they had, they would have attacked us long ago." Jun Lingxuan's expression was certain. Now that the enmity between the two parties was so thick that it could not be resolved, if the other party had enough confidence, they would not allow such a threat to exist. If Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen knew what they were thinking, they would definitely shake their heads in denial. It was not that they were unwilling to fight now, but they felt that Xiren's choice was more important. If they fought now, wouldn't it be troublesome? Actually, according to everyone's judgment, to enter the pavilion in the middle of the lake, it is not only cultivators with the metal attribute who can do it, but because of their attribute advantage, the difficulty will be reduced. Lin Taxing noticed the hesitation on everyone's faces and explained. Chapter 5748. Can other attributes work as well? Jiang Wenyan's eyes lit up. When he heard everyone's words, he thought that only cultivators of the metal attribute would have a chance, and felt that it was a pity. After all, it was not easy to find such a place in the ancient battlefield where there might be gains. After spending so much effort to come here, it would be too disappointing if there was no chance at all. Although it would be more difficult for cultivators of the non-metal attribute, there was still a chance of success. "Ta Xing, do you have any plans to give it a try?" Shangwan Yingying asked. Lin Ta Xing looked at the lake in front of him, and a trace of hesitation flashed across his face. In the end, he shook his head. "Although I covet this treasure very much, according to the cultivators who have failed before, my chances of success should be very small. So I choose to give up." In the end, his voice became firm and his attitude was certain. He no longer hesitated. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. She had to admit that Lin Taxing was an extremely outstanding cultivator. In the Lin family, Lin Taxing was the most outstanding cultivator. If not for the fact that Di Xiaofeng had already been appointed as the young master, Lin Taxing would have been the best candidate for the position. Sometimes, giving up did not mean that one was cowardly. It meant that one had a clearer understanding of oneself. Beichun, don't you want to give it a try? Ziren raised his eyebrows. He had known Di Beichun for so many years, and he felt that it would not be Di Beichun's character to give up without giving it a try. This lake is very strange. If I fail, I can still come back. If I fail and can't come back, Di Beichun turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. The reason why he did not want to fight for it was because metal attribute items were of no help to him. As a cultivator of the darkness and light attributes, if the treasures in the pavilion were of these two attributes, then his thinking would be different. Jun Lingxuan heard Di Beichun's words and sneered inwardly. I didn't think that you would be afraid. Why don't you give it a try? Di Beichun asked. The famous young master Jun must be very confident. Why don't you try it first? Jun Lingxuan was slightly stunned, but he realized that everyone's eyes were focused on him. Di Beichun, don't try to provoke me like this. You don't want to do it yourself, but you want me to do it. Do you really think I'm stupid? Master, why are you wasting your breath on him? Xiaobai rolled her eyes. This guy just likes to kick people when they're down. When it comes to himself, he's just a coward. Isn't that so? Xiao Xuanzi agreed. Jun Lingxuan's face turned ashen. He was actually ridiculed by two contract beasts. Thinking of Di Beichun's reaction earlier, Jun Lingxuan suddenly had an idea, and his ashen face eased up. Di Beichun, why don't we try it together? Do you have the guts? As soon as these words came out, Xiao Seiwu secretly applauded and quietly kicked the ball back to Di Beichun. The embarrassed party became Di Beichun. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. Even she was very afraid of such a risk. After noticing Jun Lingxuan's complacent look, Di Beichun narrowed his eyes dangerously. Okay, I promise you. Beichun. Seeing Di Beichun agree like this, Lin Taxing could not help but feel anxious. Chapter 5749. Di Beichun, you can't be impulsive. Jiang Wenyin couldn't help but speak out. He didn't expect Jun Lingxuan to play a trick at this time. It was really abominable. Di Beichun waved his hand, the corner of his mouth hooked up in a devilish smile. Jun Lingxuan has issued a challenge to me. If I don't accompany him, wouldn't I lose face for the Di family? As soon as these words came out, Lin Taxing and the others fell into silence. For a man, face was obviously not to be lost. What's more, it was not only his own face, but also the face of his family. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say much. She understood that some things could be given up, but some things must be done. At this time, she couldn't let the young master of the Di family become a joke in the eyes of others. After seeing Di Beichun agree without hesitation, Jun Lingxuan's expression changed slightly. He wanted to see this guy's hesitant appearance and make him lose face, but he didn't expect this guy to be goaded into action and drag him into the water. He remembered that this wasn't the first time such a situation had happened. He really didn't understand. Didn't this guy say that he would give up before? Why did he suddenly change his mind? Was it possible that everything he said before was just to coax him into taking the bait? For a moment, Jun Lingxuan only felt that it wasn't him who was scheming against Di Beichun, but Di Beichun who was scheming against him. Lingxuan, look, so many people have died in the lake. I'm afraid it's very difficult. Xiao Suo couldn't help but worry. She and Jun Lingxuan were engaged. Although they hadn't officially married, in her heart, he was the man she had set her mind on. She really didn't want Jun Lingxuan to take such a risk in such a dangerous matter. However, Jun Lingxuan couldn't say anything. This hole was dug by him, and now he couldn't even jump out of it. Originally, I was still a little hesitant about whether I should try it or not. Since you want to go, then I'll go with you. Ziren patted Di Beichun's shoulder, his smile as bright as the sun, extremely open-minded. Shangguan Yingying nodded. Me too, I want to try too. Normally, it's too difficult to catch up to your strength. If I can get an opportunity here, I won't have to worry about this problem. Shangguan Yingying's face was filled with joy. No matter what, as a metal-type cultivator, as long as she could obtain something from the pavilion, her strength would definitely increase by quite a bit. Yingying, Xiren frowned. He didn't want Shangguan Yingying to take the risk. I know what you're thinking, but you don't have to say it out loud. I didn't stop you from making your decision, and you can't stop me either, Shangguan Yingying said with a serious smile. Xiren paused. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, he didn't say anything. Indeed, Yingying's current cultivation wasn't inferior to his. Why did he have to stop Yingying's decision? One more won't make much of a difference. Then I'll also participate. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. After everyone stood up one by one, she felt that the river water wasn't so scary anymore. Perhaps this was the power of friendship. No matter when, there would always be someone to accompany you. Jiang Wenyin could feel the deep friendship between Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three people, and couldn't help but feel touched. In his mind, he couldn't help but recall what Bailey Hongzhuang had said to him. Sure enough, her friendship was so admirable. Chapter 5750. Originally, everyone present was about to give up, but they suddenly realized that after Jun Lingxuan started this matter, Di Beichen and the others actually planned to give it a try. Immediately, they stopped in their tracks. It was rare to see a show, so everyone naturally wouldn't miss it. Moreover, even if they couldn't reach the pavilion, they still wanted to know what kind of treasure was in the center of the pavilion. After seeing the reaction of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Jun Lingxuan couldn't help but sneer, but a feeling of jealousy rose in his heart for no reason. He mocked, "It's fine if you want to participate, but you're dragging others to die with you." Shangguan Yingying looked at Jun Lingxuan unconvinced. "This is something we're willing to do, so you don't have to worry about it. In my opinion, there are so many people around you, but it seems that no one is willing to accompany you." As Shangguan Yingying's voice fell, everyone couldn't help but look sideways. There were indeed many cultivators from the Jun family around. Originally, it wasn't a big deal that it wasn't mentioned. Everyone was just envious of the friendship between Di Beichen and the others. But now that it was mentioned, Jun Lingxuan undoubtedly looked quite lonely. Jun Lingxuan's expression was a little stiff, and the cultivators of the Jun family also wanted to say something, but stopped. They didn't want to let the young master lose face at this time, but with their current strength, entering the lake was equivalent to courting death. Just as the Jun family's disciples were about to risk their lives, Xiao So suddenly said, "Lingxuan, I'll accompany you." Everyone looked at Xiao So. For her to be able to stand up at this time, it was clear that she was sincere. Jun Lingxuan couldn't help but feel touched, and the cultivators of the Jun family were even happier. This proved that their young master didn't choose the wrong person. The other disciples aren't good at these things. If they rashly go in, they'll just lose their lives for nothing. We're not like some people who are willing to let their families take risks. Xiao So spoke up to ease the previous awkward situation. She believed that the gap between her and Bailey Hongzhuang had infinitely narrowed. Since Bailey Hongzhuang dared to go in, why wouldn't she dare? After everyone made up their minds, they no longer hesitated. After making some judgments in their hearts, they prepared to enter the lake. They slowly walked up to the lake. Even though they were already so close to it, they still couldn't feel the slightest bit of metal energy. It was as if the lake in front of them was just an ordinary lake. Everyone's heart was heavy. After entering, the slightest carelessness would cause them to lose their lives there. Jun Lingxuan cast a sidelong glance at Di Beichen's group. Suppressing the worry in his heart, he said, "Di Beichen, please." Together. The corners of Di Beichen's lips curled up slightly. His charming face was filled with his signature dazzling smile, without the slightest bit of nervousness or worry. "If you find that you can't hold on any longer, retreat immediately." Di Beichen transmitted his voice to everyone. Based on the previous cultivators, if you can swim to a place where you can't resist, you still have a chance to swim back if you can move without hesitation. Naturally, he couldn't let everyone die with him. Although this was something that no one had done before, he felt that it was possible. Moreover, Xiren and the others had already trained their reaction speed. They would definitely be faster than the average person. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others quietly exchanged glances. They understood. Chapter 57-51. You're going too? Bailey Hongzhuang asked in surprise. Bali Yin-che chuckled. Sister, you and brother-in-law are going to try it. How can I not accompany you? Whether it was in the past or now, he had always been wherever Hongzhuang was. This had never changed. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with warmth. Indeed, Yin-che had always been with her. Now, Bali Yin-che was her younger brother, her most beloved brother. Ling noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's touched gaze on her. She could not help but say faintly, Anyway, we have a contract. If you die, I can't live either. Why don't we try it together? Ling, you're always so straightforward. Xiren could not help but laugh. Ling, was usually very serious. She rarely interrupted when others were talking. However, the words that came out of her mouth made people not know whether to laugh or cry. She was really too straightforward. I like to speak the truth. Ling did not feel that there was anything wrong with what she said. Her face was calm and matter-of-factly. Even so, Bailey Hongzhuang was still touched. She knew that Ling was stubborn. Then let's go in. The next moment, everyone rushed into the lake together under the shocked gazes of the crowd. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the several figures in the lake. There was no doubt that this was the most likely attempt to succeed. Lin Hua and the practitioners of the D family were all praying in their hearts. They only hoped that they would succeed. If they failed, the consequences would be unbearable. Lin Taxing clenched his fists. Di Beichen was the young master of the D family. If he lost his life here, he really did not know how to face the head of the D family when he returned. After entering the lake, Bailey Hongzhuang experienced the sharp metal attribute energy that everyone was talking about. The metal attribute had always been known for its sharpness. After entering the lake, she felt as if there were countless sword chi rushing towards her. The power of light was unleashed, forming a layer of armor on the surface of his body, resisting the power of metal. At the same time, she sped up and rushed forward. In this lake, there was no other energy other than the metal element. Once the elemental energy in one's body was exhausted, there was only one outcome: death. What a scary place. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed inwardly. It was no wonder that only metal-type cultivators could last a little longer here. It was because they could still absorb some elemental energy from the lake. After moving forward for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang found that the difficulty increased exponentially. Every step forward was extremely difficult. This feeling was similar to when he was climbing the stairway to heaven. The higher he went, the more difficult it was to advance. The sharp power had already pierced through the armor formed by her elemental energy. The metal attribute energy unceremoniously pierced through her skin, causing a heart-wrenching pain. This was the first time that she had felt this kind of elemental energy. It was far sharper than the elemental energy that she usually encountered. After piercing through her skin, the elemental energy even entered her body and wreaked havoc in her body, forcing her to divert her attention to control it. Once her meridians were severed, it would be really bad. On the shore, Di Beichun and the others quickly approached the front as soon as they entered the lake. Chapter 57-52. 50 meters. Even after moving forward 50 meters, everyone's speed did not slow down too much. They were still moving forward steadily. 60 meters, 80 meters, 100 meters. As the group advanced further and further, everyone's hearts were in their throats. The distance from the shore to the pavilion in the middle of the lake was only 200 meters. They were already halfway there, and everyone was still advancing. If they could really succeed, everyone was looking forward to it. Young Master, you can do it. Young Master, you can do it. For a moment, the cultivators from the D family and the Jun family could not help but cheer for their family heads. This was not only for the treasures in the pavilion in the middle of the lake, but also a contest between the two young masters. Whoever won would have a lower status in the future. However, more cultivators could not help but sigh at the gap between them. I have to admit it, even if I don't want to. Previously, the most powerful cultivator had only advanced 80 meters, but now they have all advanced more than 100 meters. Of course, it's infuriating to compare oneself to others. Most of the cultivators who went in earlier were from the mercenary guild. How could their cultivation resources be compared to the young masters of the aristocratic families? Their strength is not something that ordinary people can compare to. You're right. Which young master of the aristocratic families is not a monster? 110 meters. 120 meters. At this moment, everyone's bodies were bleeding. Traces of blood floated in the lake. Even on the shore, everyone could feel the pain and effort of the people under the lake. Everyone's speed slowed down. At this point, they were almost at the limit of their efforts. Countless metal attribute forces were like sharp blades that constantly scraped their bodies, leaving scars wherever they passed. Even if they used all their skills to protect themselves, under such a dense number of sharp blades, their armor was extremely fragile. He felt as if he had rushed into a place full of sword chi, and all the power was trying to squeeze him out of this place. Among the crowd, Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou were the first to slow down. Bailey Hongzhuang, Deep Beichan, Bai Liyan Che, and Ling gradually slowed down as well. From the perspective of the people on the shore, they could see that Di Beichan and the other three were slightly ahead of Xiao Sou and her companion, but it was only a meter away. Everyone seemed to be struggling. However, to everyone's surprise, Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were the fastest. Even if their speed was much slower than before, they still had the strength to move forward. It was clear that they were much more relaxed than Di Beichan and the others. Xiren and Yingying both have the metal attribute. Maybe they can succeed. Lin Taxing's eyes sparkled with expectation. He knew the strength of Xiren and Shangwan Yingying. Both of them were first-class geniuses, but Di Beichan and Bailey Hongzhuang usually overshadowed their limelight because they were too dazzling. However, he knew that they were also two outstanding people. Bailey Hongzhuang tried her best to resist. Even she could not help but feel that it was difficult to continue under such circumstances. However, when she noticed Xiren and Shangwan Yingying in front of her, she was very happy. Chapter 57-53. Even though they could already see the pavilion in the middle of the lake in front of them, Bailey Hongzhuang had a feeling that they would not be able to reach it. However, since they were already here, it was not a bad idea to try and see how far they could go before their lives were in danger. Both Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou gritted their teeth and persevered. The pain was indescribable. If they could, they would have given up long ago. However, Di Beichan and the rest were still moving forward. If they gave up just like that, it would be too embarrassing. Therefore, the two of them gritted their teeth and persevered with all their might. They were geniuses who were not weaker than their opponents. How could they give up so easily? Xiren and Shangwan Yingying found it very difficult to move forward, as they were of the metal attribute. In this lake full of elemental energy, their hearts were clearer than usual. When they were cultivating in the past, they did not have much understanding of the metal attribute. Now they suddenly understood the various wonderful uses of the metal attribute. The energy in their bodies unconsciously began to imitate these blade-like energies. There were even sounds of metal clashing around them. Since these energies could turn into blades, their own energies could do the same. The two of them were not familiar with it in the beginning. Later on, they slowly grasped some tricks. Although it was very difficult to move forward, they could still feel that they were moving forward bit by bit. Even if it was just a little, it was enough to make them happy. Yingying, you can do it, Xiren said with difficulty. We'll definitely succeed. Shangwan Yingying gritted her teeth. Her gaze was determined. They had to prove themselves with their abilities. 150 meters. 160 meters. As the group got closer to the pavilion in the middle of the lake, the cultivators on the shore fell silent. Their gazes were fixed on the few figures. This time they should really succeed. 180 meters. Now, the blade had solidified, and everyone had turned into a bloodied man. Piercing pain came from all over their bodies. Everyone only had one feeling, and that was pain. However, they could no longer feel where the pain came from. Look, Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou seemed to have given up. As the voice of a cultivator fell, everyone turned to look. As expected, Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou had stopped moving forward. Obviously, he was more than a meter behind Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Although he couldn't see their expressions, he could guess that they must have given it their all. At that moment, no one mocked them, because to be able to reach such a distance, they had already surpassed the vast majority of people. At the very least, the cultivators on the shore had basically reached this stage, so they had no right to mock the other party. After reaching 180 meters, Bailey Hongzhuang tried to move forward again. Suddenly, a tremor spread from the bottom of her heart. That was the fear of death, the despair that came from the bottom of his heart. Bailey Hongzhuang retreated without hesitation the moment she sensed it. She completely gave up on the idea of moving forward because she could feel that if she moved forward a bit, even if it was just a centimeter, she would be killed by this power. Chapter 57-54. It's too scary. Bailey Hongzhuang felt a lingering fear. This was the first time she felt so clearly on the edge of life and death. Even if she didn't move forward, she knew very well that if she took a step forward, she would definitely lose her life. When everyone noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly started to retreat, they couldn't help but be stunned. They were only 20 meters away, but Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly gave up. It seems that Bailey Hongzhuang shouldn't be able to move forward anymore. The closer we are to the pavilion in the middle of the lake, the greater the pressure. Don't think that it's only 20 meters. It's actually as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Just as everyone was guessing, they suddenly noticed that Di Beichun and the rest had also started to retreat. Ling Er, Bai Li Yinshe, and Jiang Yin all remembered what Di Beichun had said earlier. When they felt that something was wrong, they immediately retreated. Humans have an instinctive sense of danger, let alone them who often wander on the edge of life and death. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou were already in extreme pain. They couldn't even move forward. When they noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had started to retreat, they also retreated without hesitation. As long as they could escape from this pain, they were willing to do anything. Among everyone, only Ziren and Shangwan Yingying persisted in moving forward. Even if the speed was very slow, no one lost their patience because they knew all too well how difficult it was. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest gave up after sensing the fatal danger. The process of retreating was also very torturous. They simply couldn't go back quickly. They were still in the midst of endless blades. Their physical condition was no longer the same as when they were moving forward, so retreating was also incomparably difficult. In the process of retreating, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood why those cultivators had lost their lives. They must have not given up after sensing the fatal danger. Once they tried to move forward, they would be doomed eternally. Ling Sun, are we going to die here? Xiao Shou's voice was extremely weak. Even if she turned back, she was already seriously injured. Looking at the distance behind her, she only felt that it was too difficult. Perhaps he wouldn't even be able to hold on until he reached the shore. Jun Lingxuan's face was covered with bloodstains, but his voice was very firm. Say Wu, believe in yourself. We will be able to return to the shore. Don't give up. All right. Everyone noticed that the speed at which Bailey Hongzhuang and her party were returning was just as slow. They were not much faster than the speed at which Ziren and his party were advancing. I'm afraid they've suffered heavy injuries and exhausted their essence energy. I wonder if they can make it back? A cultivator voiced his conjecture. He did not think that it would be easy for them to return this time. It's really not worth it if you lose your life. In my opinion, they will have a hard time before 80 meters. Everyone agreed with this judgment because before the 80-meter mark, everyone had advanced very smoothly. But after the 80-meter mark, it was much more difficult, and the difficulty of returning was naturally the same. I think you guys shouldn't worry about this. Think about how those cultivators couldn't even come back. At least they can still try to come back. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned and suddenly felt that the situation was indeed like this. Just this point alone was enough to prove the disparity between them. Chapter 57-55. Ziren and Shangwan Yingying had never felt that a distance of 20 meters was so far away. The price they had to pay for every step forward made them fearful. At this point, there was only one kind of willpower that supported them to continue forward. They had no way out. This last bit of distance had almost exhausted their elemental energy. Even if they turned back now, they would definitely die in the lake. Therefore, their only chance of survival was to continue forward and reach the pavilion. Countless thoughts appeared in their minds. In the end, they still focused on sensing the metal element. I can't take it anymore. When they were only a thin line away from the pavilion, Zyron felt that he had seen death. His body had no strength left. He didn't even have the strength to struggle. Oh no, just a little bit more. Zyron and the others can't hold on anymore. Perhaps it was due to the connection between brothers. Bei-chun turned his head and noticed Zyron's situation. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang paused. When she thought of Zyron and Shangwan Yingying leaving them, she couldn't imagine the scene. Bei-chun, lend me a hand. Bailey Hongzhuang transmitted her voice. In the next moment, a chant came out of Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth. A kind of invigorating energy spread from the bottom of the lake. Even with so much metal elemental energy, it couldn't stop it. Bei-chun placed one hand on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Light elemental energy poured into Bailey Hongzhuang's body. At this point, they were both at the end of their rope. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have much elemental energy left in her body. It could only be done by the two of them working together. Rich light elemental energy exploded under the lake. It was like a resplendent lamp, suddenly illuminating the lake. Everyone was attracted by this light. After hearing the mysterious chant, they all understood Bailey Hongzhuang's intention. She's helping Zyron and Shangwan Yingying. She's actually helping them when she can't even protect her own life. For a time, everyone present could not help but be moved. According to their judgment, with Bailey Hongzhuang and Bei-chun's strength, even if it would be extremely difficult for them to return, the possibility of them surviving was still not small. However, now that they had exhausted their strength, it would be impossible for them to return. Under such circumstances, they still made such a decision. Were they not afraid of death? This thought flashed through everyone's mind, but everyone understood that it was not that they were not afraid of death, but that they were willing to die for their friends. After noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, Ling, and Bai Li Yin Che followed Bei-chun and channeled their elemental energy into her body. Their chanting gradually became louder and louder, and the amplification effect also became apparent. When Zyron and Shangwan Yingying could not hold on any longer. Even though there was only a thin line between them, they could only give up in despair no matter how unwilling they were. However, at this moment, a wave of warm energy suddenly came, injecting life into their exhausted bodies. Even without turning their heads, they knew that this was all done for them by Bailey Hongzhuang and Bei-chun. When Zyron roared and used all his strength to climb up to the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Shangwan Yingying and Zyron climbed up to the pavilion in the middle of the lake almost at the same time. However, at the moment they rushed out of the water, tears had already blurred their vision and merged with the lake water, bringing with them a bitter taste. Chapter 57-56. Even though they were in the lake, they could still hear the conversations of the cultivators on the shore. They understood the situation of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others very well. In a situation where they could not even protect themselves, Bailey Hongzhuang still gave up all her power to help them. How are they going to leave the lake alive? After Jiang Wenyin felt the increase in power from Bailey Hongzhuang's chanting, he felt that his exhausted body had gained a little more strength. However, he was not in the mood to become stronger as soon as possible. Instead, he was shocked by the friendship between Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He also had many friends, but life and death friends were pitifully few. Everyone around him valued their own interests the most. They were willing to sacrifice their lives for their friends. That was just empty talk. Other than family, it was impossible for ordinary friends to do this. But now he actually saw it. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sowu were also shocked. A thought flashed through their minds. Bailey Hongzhuang must be crazy. In order to help Zyron and Shangwan Ying, she was willing to sacrifice her own life. Wasn't this seeking death? However, this was also good. Originally, the two of them wanted to get rid of Bailey Hongzhuang. But now that Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen, it was equivalent to helping them solve a big problem. Based on the relationship between Deep Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, one could imagine the blow that Deep Beichen had suffered from Bailey Hongzhuang's death. When the time comes, all the advantages would belong to them. After when Ziren and Shangwan Yingying walked to the pavilion in the middle of the lake, all the pressure immediately dissipated. The most peculiar thing was that the wounds on their bodies had healed in a short period of time. The people on the shore were also shocked when they saw this. This pavilion is really not simple. Their faces were still full of scars, and now they have disappeared. Needless to say, the treasures in the pavilion in the middle of the lake are not simple. One and Ziren are really lucky. When Ziren and Shangwan Yingying couldn't care less about the things in the pavilion, they immediately looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in the lake. After they succeeded, Bailey Hongzhuang also stopped chanting. Di Beichen and the others retracted their powers one after another. However, they were already heavily injured, and the origin energy in their bodies had been greatly depleted. Their situation had undoubtedly worsened. No one felt that it was not worth it. After knowing that when Ziren and the other had succeeded, everyone breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Ziren, what about Hongzhuang and the others? Shangwan Yingying's eyes turned red. She knew that this power did not only belong to Bailey Hongzhuang, but also to Di Beichen and the others. It was so dangerous underwater. If they did not return as soon as possible, they would not be able to return. Damn it! When Ziren could not help but curse out loud. This feeling made him feel like he was going to collapse and go crazy. He had never been so flustered before. All the thoughts flashed through his mind. Worry, nervousness, fear. All the calmness and rationality seemed to have disappeared at this moment. No matter how hard he tried to calm himself down, he just couldn't do it. He did not know what to do to help Di Beichen. He was afraid that everyone would lose their lives because of this. If that was the case, he would rather die himself. Suddenly, a thought appeared in Ziren's mind. Chapter 57:57. As Ziren's voice fell, Shangwan Yingying seemed to have found her backbone. She wiped the tears off her face and nodded frantically. That's right. Maybe the solution is in this pavilion. There must be a way. There must be a way. Shangwan Yingying quickly rushed into the pavilion. Because she was too anxious, she stumbled and almost fell. She leaned on the edge of the table and looked at the treasure on the table that was shining with a golden light. It was something that shone like gold. It was shaped like a stone, and a rich metal attribute was spreading from it. Even if she was just looking at it, she could feel the metal attribute constantly fusing into her body. Shangwan Yingying picked up the stone on the table. If it was any other time, she would definitely be careful of the various dangers in this pavilion. However, she could not care about all of this now. She urgently wanted to find a way to remove the metal attribute energy in the lake. Even if it meant that she would die, she would not hesitate. Picking up the golden stone, Shangwan Yingying tried to change the lake water. However, she found that the stone had no effect on the lake other than the rich metal attribute. No, why not? What should I do? Shangwan Yingying was in so much pain that she was going crazy. Her tears could not stop falling. She looked around the pavilion, and her body could not stop trembling because of nervousness. When Ziren was also frantically looking for the mechanism in the pavilion. However, no matter how hard they looked, they could not find any mechanism at all. For a moment, Ziren was completely panicking. This situation made him feel incomparably devastated. Beichen and the others were risking their lives for him, but he could not do anything. This feeling was really too devastating. It can't be. It can't be. When Ziren shouted hysterically. He couldn't believe it. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could feel Ziren and Shangwan Yingying's despair. A trace of sadness emerged in their hearts, but they did not regret it. As long as Ziren and Yingying were safe, that was enough. After seeing this scene, everyone fell into silence. This was something that no one had expected. Even if many people did not know Di Beichen and the others, they could not help but feel sad at this moment. It was really a pity that such outstanding people had fallen like this. Star Stomper, what should we do? The cultivators from the Lin family and the D family panicked. They could not imagine the consequences. However, Lin Taxing had already fallen into silence. His spirit was tense, and he kept praying in his heart. He believed that there would be a turn for the better. Previously, the patriarch had said that Beichen and Hong Zhuang both had great opportunities. As long as they didn't encounter any big problems, they would definitely be able to turn misfortune into blessings. It was just that, was the current situation a big problem? Xiao Shou and Jun Lingxuan couldn't help but feel excited. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were dead, their biggest stumbling block would disappear. When they thought of this, they couldn't help but feel happy. The two of them seemed to have gained more strength as they continued to swim towards the shore. As long as they could survive, they would be the biggest winners. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not give up because of this. Even if their physical condition was extremely bad, they would not give up until the very last moment. So difficult. Chapter 5758. Go to sleep. You won't be in so much pain when you're asleep. A warm voice rang in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. As long as she closes her eyes, she will be able to escape from this endless pain. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly closed her eyes. She was simply too tired, and she wanted a rest. Just as she was about to close her eyes, a familiar and incomparably sentimental face appeared in her mind. When she had first met him, he had been dressed in golden robes and had bright eyes and white teeth. He had been as calm as the wind, and his smile had stunned the world. Those warm eyes, that doting smile, that broad chest, everything about him had made her yearn for him. No, I can't leave him like this. I had said that I want to be with him for the rest of my life. A hint of clarity returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black, phoenix-like eyes. She pulled herself together. I can't die like this. An aura of despair enveloped Di Beichen and the others. Every movement of their bodies was accompanied by endless agony. Countless sharp blades had almost pierced them into sieves. All of their defenses had been reduced to nothing after the power had been reduced. Perhaps this would be their final resting place. Just then, a whirlpool suddenly appeared at the bottom of the lake. This whirlpool had appeared out of nowhere, but the power of its suction was exceptionally terrifying. The powerful whirlpool immediately swept Bailey Hongzhuang and the others into the bottom of the lake. They did not even have the chance to struggle. A wave of dizziness washed over them. They felt as if they were being swirled around by the current, as if there was a black hole at the bottom of the lake. It was sucking them in without any explanation. The powerful water current slammed into their bodies, causing their injuries to worsen. This sudden turn of events attracted everyone's attention. No one had expected such a change to occur at the bottom of the lake. Everyone was dumbfounded. This lake isn't very deep. Besides, isn't the bottom of the lake a flat surface? Why would a whirlpool suddenly appear? As one cultivator broke the deadlock, the rest of the cultivators returned to their senses. The surroundings suddenly became very noisy. That's right. That whirlpool seemed to have appeared out of nowhere and sucked Di Beichun and the others away. Look, the bottom of the lake seems to have returned to normal. This lake is really strange. I'm afraid it will be difficult to come out alive after being sucked in. Everyone sighed faintly. Not to mention that the lake water was so strange. Just the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were riddled with holes. Even if there really was an opportunity under the water, a little test would probably turn them into ashes. Ziren, they're gone. Shangguan Yingying stared blankly at the lake that had regained its calm. She rubbed her red and swollen eyes and hurriedly said, "Does this mean that they still have a chance to live?" Ziren was silent for a while before he nodded. That's right. Beichen and the others have always had the ability to turn misfortunes into blessings. As long as there was no result, it meant that they were still alive. Yes, they must still be alive. Shangguan Yingying nodded heavily. They definitely will. However, the hatred in her heart for Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou was constantly deepening. If it weren't for those two hateful guys, Beichen and the others wouldn't have tried and wouldn't have fallen into such danger. If they had really encountered an accident, they would have destroyed the Jun and Xiao families at all costs. Lin Taxing suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. He couldn't help but recall the scene when the family head spoke. Chapter 57-59. Apart from a cultivator's own talent and strength, there was something else that was very important. As the saying goes, heroes are made of circumstances. Luck often had a lot to do with it as well. Di Beichen was able to rely on his own strength to come to the upper realm and escape the fatal situation back then. It was clear that his luck was very strong. Bailey Hongzhuang had encountered many sources of luck after coming to the upper realm. She was also a person with great luck. Generally, cultivators whose luck was not as good as theirs would find it very difficult to compete with them. As long as they did not encounter any major problems, they would definitely be able to turn danger into safety. When he first heard this, he thought that this was too profound and could not understand at all. However, after seeing the scene just now, he suddenly understood. If it had been any other cultivator, they would have died long ago under such circumstances. There would not have been any changes at all. However, this vortex had suddenly appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Although many people believed that this vortex could be fatal, he felt that this might be the turning point. There was an additional variable from the original situation of certain death. At least there was a slight possibility. He did not know whether Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen could return, but as long as there was a glimmer of hope, it was still possible. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were dizzy from the swirling water. They felt like they were going to vomit their organs out. Bang! Bang, bang, bang. After the first sound was heard, several sounds were heard one after another. Bailey Hongzhuang fell heavily to the ground. Her body, which was riddled with holes, had long been severely injured. Even though she had been injured often before, she had never been injured so severely. In fact, she couldn't even move an inch. Her entire body was in excruciating pain. It was as if her body was no longer under her control. Her head was dizzy. She could not even take a careful look at everything around her. Beichen Wenyan, Bailey Hongzhuang called out with all her might. She could feel the connection between Ling, and Jiang Wenyan, but she did not know if Beichen and Jiang Wenyan were there too. Yes, Di Beichen seemed to have used up all his strength to spit out a single word. Jiang Wenyan also let out a muffled groan. His entire body felt as if it had fallen apart. Even his breathing was accompanied by unbearable pain. After hearing the familiar voice, Bailey Hongzhuang felt relieved. Even if his body was in a terrible state, his heart was at ease. At the very least, they had survived for the time being. But soon, Bailey Hongzhuang heard another muffled groan. This one belonged to Jun Lingxuan. It seemed that all of them had been swept here together. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head with difficulty. As expected, she saw Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou. At this moment, both of them were badly mutilated, lying limply on the ground, as if they no longer had the slightest strength to resist. If she still had a bit of strength left, she would definitely take advantage of this opportunity to kill these two fellows. But now, it was extremely difficult for her to even move her fingers, let alone sit up. This thought flashed across the minds of both parties present, but no one had the strength to move. They were all lying on the ground. Compared to when they were in the lake earlier, the current situation was much more comfortable. Even if there were pills in their storage rings, no one could retrieve them now. Helpless, everyone could only rely on cultivation to recover. Chapter 5760. Following the disappearance of Di Beichen and the others, the crowd turned their attention to Ziren and Shangguan Ying after a heated discussion. They had finally entered the pavilion in the middle of the lake with great difficulty, and they did not know what kind of treasures were in there. They had spent so much effort and might have even caused Di Beichen and the others to lose their lives. It would be a pity if they only got an ordinary reward. When Ziren and Shangguan Ying found it difficult to calm down for a moment. Originally, they had been hoping to successfully obtain the treasure in the pavilion, but after all that had happened, their original eagerness had completely disappeared. If they could choose again, they would rather not have everything here. After a long while, the two of them finally calmed down. They believed that Di Beichen and the others would not fall so easily. They would definitely have a chance to meet them again. Ying We can't let Beichun and the others down. Xiren's expression was firm, and his red eyes were filled with determination. No matter what, he wanted to become stronger. If there was a chance, he wanted to fight side by side with Beichun. However, if there was no chance, he could only avenge Beichun if he became strong enough. Shangguan Yingying wiped the tears from her face and nodded seriously. That's right. The two of them looked at the golden stone again, and the rich metal attribute energy continued to flow into their bodies. Even if they did not know what it was, they were certain that it would be very helpful to their cultivation. After realizing that this thing was not dangerous to their bodies, the two of them began to absorb it with peace of mind. Just as the two of them had absorbed the stone, a golden light suddenly flashed like the sun. It was so bright that no one dared to look directly at it. When the golden light gradually dissipated, the crowd looked at the pavilion in the middle of the lake again and found that Xiren and Shangguan Yingying had disappeared without a trace. Where was the figure in the red pavilion? The crowd was dumbfounded again. They disappeared again? This lake was really strange. Whether it was in the lake water or in the pavilion, they had all disappeared. Could it be that they went to the same place? If that is the case, then all of this will be interesting. However, I feel that Xiren and Jian Xiaodian have most likely obtained the legacy and disappeared. Beichun and the others are probably not that lucky. Lin Taxing was equally stunned. He had thought that since Beichun was not around, he would have to take care of one and Xiren. He did not expect such a scene to happen now. He did not know when they would meet again. 7 people were lying on the cold ground, their clothes already stained with blood. If someone came here, they would definitely think that these were 7 corpses. However, upon closer inspection, they would be able to feel the slight rise and fall of their chests. Clearly, they hadn't died yet. As Nebula Realm cultivators, everyone's recovery ability was undoubtedly very fast. Unfortunately, the metal energy from before was too sharp, and they had stayed in the lake for so long. Not only did this energy pierce through their skin, but it also entered their bodies. Under the influence of this power, the speed of recovery of his injuries was also much slower. At first, everyone was worried that there would be some kind of danger inside. Since they could not move at all, once there was danger, only death would await them. Fortunately, such a thing did not happen. Chapter 5761. Although their injuries were slowly recovering, everyone was finally able to speak after 2 days. The metal-type energy in this lake is so strong. If Yingying and Xiren could really obtain the inheritance, their control over metal-type energy would increase greatly. Thinking of Shangguan Yingying and Xiren's painful expressions, a warm current flowed through her heart. If they knew that everyone was still alive, they would definitely be very happy. The cultivator who set up this pavilion was very powerful. Just giving them some pointers would be a great reward. How powerful were the cultivators in the Immortal region? They already knew when they were in the abandoned Immortal Forest. Although Senior Yu only let them practice their swordsmanship and did not give them any pointers, they knew that Senior Yu's true strength was extremely terrifying. If Yao Xiang could really receive Senior Yu's pointers, they would only be qualified if they mastered this move. However, up until now, they had yet to truly master this move. After this, I really have to hand it to you guys. Jiang Wenyan could not help but sigh. First, you almost lost your life for them. Now, instead of thinking about your own situation, you're still thinking about them. Although it was a sarcastic tone, everyone could hear the gentleness in his voice. If they were in your shoes, Xiren and Yingying would do the same. Beichun smiled faintly. They had grown up together, and they were no longer ordinary friends, but real family. Jiang Wenyan was silent, but his heart yearned even more. However, he now had the chance to join. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' words, Jun Lingshuan could not help but mock. You guys are really dreaming. It's good enough that one and Xiren can obtain the treasures in the pavilion. You want to obtain the inheritance? Dream on. That's right. Xiao Suo mocked. She did not think that one and Xiren could obtain the inheritance. If they really did, it would be a terrifying increase in strength. How do you know? Bailey Hongzhuang retorted. It's so difficult to reach the pavilion. Have you guys encountered such a difficult obstacle before? I feel that this is a senior selecting a disciple. Don't say sour grapes when you can't eat them. I think so too. Jiang Wenyin agreed. If a checkpoint like this doesn't count as an assessment, then the requirements here are too high. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou snorted coldly and fell into silence. 2 mouths couldn't win against 5 mouths, so it was better to just shut up. At this moment, their feelings were extremely complicated. Normally, it was already very difficult for the two of them to go up against Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, let alone Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Now that everyone could not move, it was naturally peaceful. But once everyone recovered their fighting strength, the situation would be terrible. The other party would definitely attack them without hesitation. It would be too difficult for them to escape this calamity. In fact, they've been thinking about this question for the past 2 days. If they couldn't find a way to escape, then the moment Bailey Hongzhuang and the others regained their mobility, they would undoubtedly be dead. An indescribable gloominess spread throughout their hearts. The heavens were really unfair. Wouldn't it have been better if they had allowed Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to die at the bottom of the lake? But now, the two of them had to be dragged into this matter, causing the situation to take a huge turn. Chapter 5762. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others naturally knew that after Deng Rao regained his mobility, this was the best opportunity to kill Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shui. Perhaps this was a heaven-sent opportunity. If they took advantage of this opportunity to get rid of these two people, the Jun family and Xiao family would definitely suffer a big blow. Although they didn't know whether Shu Yu would still choose to stand on this side after losing her disciple, it was always beneficial to them. Therefore, after saying a few words, everyone continued to cultivate and heal their injuries. The sooner they could regain their mobility, the sooner they could solve this disaster. So, we have to hurry up and find a way to leave here before they recover. Jun Lingxuan transmitted his voice. Xiao Sou replied, I understand, but we don't even know where we are right now. I'm afraid it won't be easy to leave. There's no other way. I don't believe that the heavens really want me to die. Maybe there will be other opportunities. Jun Lingxuan's eyes burned with unwillingness. He was also a person with an opportunity. If the heavens didn't want Di Beichen to die, would they let him die? He didn't believe it. Time passed slowly. After everyone eliminated more than half of the metal attribute power in their bodies also regained their mobility. Immediately, everyone took out medicinal pills and took them. Relying on cultivation to heal their injuries was undoubtedly slow. With this medicinal pill, everyone's injuries could be quickly healed. After Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou took the medicinal pills, they rushed to the other side in a defensive posture, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others with fear. Since everyone came here by accident, why don't we temporarily put down our hatred and learn how to get out of here? Jun Lingxuan's voice was slightly heavy. His still pale face revealed a bit of awkwardness and reluctance. Even if he knew that his words were not very persuasive, he had to try because there was no other way. After Bailey Hongzhuang stood up, she could clearly see the situation around her. It was a very dark and secluded place, surrounded by rocks. The rocks were black and moist. They were in a square space, and there was a faint light in front of them. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou were standing there. Noticing this, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that the two of them must be trying to escape from the front. However, it was impossible to pass through there, so they stood there awkwardly to discuss. Do you think such words are useful to us? Di Beichun didn't answer. Instead, he asked a question. More people means more ways. If you're trapped here, won't it be useless? Xiao Sou was a little nervous, and her voice was filled with panic. We don't mind taking your lives first, then we'll figure out a way ourselves. Bali Yin Che's voice was cold. What useful ideas can you two idiots come up with? As soon as these words came out, Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou's expressions turned extremely ugly. Don't force us. If you push us too hard and we really explode, you'll also suffer. Jun Lingxuan's eyes were malicious, full of resentment and threat. He wouldn't admit defeat so easily. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other. They could roughly guess the meaning of Jun Lingxuan's words. Then why don't you try? Ling Er's expressionless face was filled with coldness. Chapter 5763. Hearing this, Xiao Shou seemed to have made up her mind and nodded heavily. Indeed, they had no way to retreat. The dangerous situation that Master had mentioned before was roughly like this. If they couldn't defeat or repel the other party this time, they really couldn't go back. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had already made up their minds. This time, no matter what, they wouldn't let the other party go. With a move of their figures, everyone attacked Jun Lingxuan and his companion without hesitation. Even if their injuries hadn't healed and they had only regained their mobility, their killing intent hadn't decreased in the slightest. Since they were destined to be enemies, they had to kill them as soon as possible to avoid more variables. After Jun Lingxuan noticed this scene, they were also nervous. They clearly felt that there was a light behind them. It should be a path, but they didn't know why they couldn't walk through it. So, delay for half a minute. I'll break through quickly. Jun Lingxuan was full of confidence in himself. He had already received the opportunity to break through, but he had been suppressing it recently. Now, if he wanted to break through, it would be a simple matter. Xiao Shou nodded slightly. Although it was very difficult for her to resist for a moment with her strength, her injuries were actually lighter than Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Her recovery was also better than theirs. Only Jiang Wenyan's situation should be similar to hers, but he was just helping. She felt that Jiang Wenyan might not really use his full strength. Everyone rushed forward and stabbed the other party with their swords without hesitation. For them, if they didn't have to break through, then they wouldn't. It was best to take advantage of Jun Lingxuan's breakthrough to deal with the other party. Otherwise, once he broke through, it would be difficult for them to deal with him again. For such a guy, it was really not worth it for them to break through early. Ding, ding, ding. Everyone's attack speed was actually not very fast. Compared to their usual strength, it was really far worse. Xiao Shou blocked in front of Jun Lingxuan and blocked everyone's attack with her sword. Although everyone's strength was not as strong as before, and their speed was also weakened, their fighting spirit was still there. Relying on Xiao Shou alone, it was impossible to resist everyone's attack. Almost in a face-to-face confrontation, Xiao Shou was already injured. However, she still held on. If she couldn't stall for time now, then it would really be a dead end. Bailey Hongzhuang's sword violently stabbed out and mercilessly stabbed toward Xiao Shou. It's time to end the grudges between them. Xiao Shou's mind. Just when she thought she was going to lose her life, suddenly, another sword appeared and knocked Bailey Hongzhuang's sword away. Then, she saw a familiar figure appear beside her. Jun Lingxuan, you've broken through? Xiao Shou looked at Jun Lingxuan excitedly. She saw that Jun Lingxuan's injuries had all disappeared. It was obvious that he had recovered from his breakthrough. Jun Lingxuan nodded and looked confidently at Xiao Shou. Let me do it. Looking at Jun Lingxuan, Xiao Shou's eyes flashed with infatuation and her lips curled into a smile. Jun Lingxuan turned to look at Di Beichun and the rest. Di Beichun, luck isn't always on your side. Chapter 5764. Jiang Wenyan was also shocked when he saw that Jun Lingxuan had fully recovered from his injuries. If that was the case, the advantage between the two parties might really change. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not expect Jun Lingxuan to break through so quickly. Usually, a breakthrough would take some time. Even if they broke through the shackles, they would still need to stabilize their cultivation. However, Jun Lingxuan had successfully broken through in just a few breaths. Could it be that there was such a change after reaching the Radiant Moon Realm? Thinking about how Zhong Limu had broken through while sleeping, perhaps it was because he had suppressed it and the breakthrough was completed in the blink of an eye. However, the current situation was extremely disadvantageous for them. Jun Lingxuan gave Xiao Shou a look before attacking Di Beichun. Among everyone, he hated Di Beichun the most. As long as he could take Di Beichun's life with his own hands, just the thought of it was enough to make him excited. Di Beichun, be careful, Jiang Wenyan shouted. Di Beichun dodged Jun Lingxuan's attack. In just one exchange, he could feel that Jun Lingxuan's strength was much stronger than before. This difference was far greater than the difference between the levels of the Nebula Realm. Thinking about it, this was the advantage of breaking through after suppressing it. If it was an ordinary cultivator who had just broken through to the Radiant Moon realm, they would definitely not be able to compare. Ding ding ding. Jun Lingxuan's every move was ruthless, attacking Di Beichen's vital points from tricky angles. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest went up together, but their condition was much worse than usual due to their injuries. Even if they worked together, they could only block Jun Lingxuan's attacks. Di Beichen's heart sank. The current environment had the most water element, and there was very little dark energy. He could not use the dark energy to summon help. If this continued, he could only break through. Although he felt that it was not worth it, there was no other way. After Jun Lingxuan broke through, Xiao Shou also broke through. As long as they could kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. So what if they didn't continue to suppress them? Everything was worth it. Moreover, they had broken through to the Radiant Moon realm. Once they left this place, they would be able to fight for more resources. Damn it, Xiao Shou has also broken through. Jiang Wenyin was shocked. He could not understand how Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou could break through so smoothly. Didn't he need an opportunity to break through? Why was he able to break through immediately when he wanted to? Moreover, this breakthrough was so fast and simple that it completely overturned his understanding. Although he also felt that he would soon break through to the Radiant Moon tier, it would not be as easy as these two. Bailey Hongzhuang, this day next year will be the day you die. Xiao Shou charged towards Bailey Hongzhuang with a ferocious expression. The murderous intent that had accumulated in her heart all this time had completely exploded. She wanted to kill this woman who had taken everything from her with her own hands, and then take it back with her own hands. Sensing the threat, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed, and she immediately prepared to break through. A tyrannical aura spread. She had broken through to the Radiant Moon tier. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou were surprised to see that other people had broken through. Chapter 5765. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was just about to break through, was shocked when she sensed this aura. She turned to look at Jiang Wenyin. No one had expected Jiang Wenyin to suddenly break through at a time like this. This was truly unexpected. Jiang Wenyin was overjoyed. He had hoped that he could break through as soon as possible so that he could get everyone out of their predicament. Although he had been seriously injured this time, it was a blessing in disguise. He could feel that he was getting closer to breaking through. Just a moment ago, he had suddenly broken through. Jiang Wenyin blocked Xiao Shou's attack. His stern face was cold and detached. Xiao Shou, this situation is not certain yet. Jiang Wenyin, you may be on friendly terms with them, but I've known you longer than they have. At a time like this, there's no need for you to stand on their side. Jun Lingxuan looked at Jiang Wenyin and persuaded him. You only care about benefits. As long as you kill them, I'll give you double the benefits. You must know that as long as they disappear, the Di family and the Lin family will fall at our hands sooner or later. Xiao Shou's expression was calm. There was no such thing as an eternal friend. At a time like this, betrayal was the most common occurrence. She believed that Jiang Wenyin would not refuse. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others frowned. Even if Jiang Wenyin were to join Jun Lingxuan's side, they might still be able to deal with him. However, if Jiang Wenyin were to really do that, it would only prove that they had misjudged him. Jiang Wenyin suddenly chuckled. His gaze drifted for a moment before it landed on Jun Lingxuan again. This time, there was an unprecedented seriousness in his eyes. Jun Lingxuan, I was indeed like that in the past. However, after meeting them, I've suddenly grown tired of my previous way of doing things. Benefits are indeed important, but now, I feel that sacrificing my life for my friends is also a very cool thing to do. Jiang Wenyin's features had always been delicate and pretty. He had always faced the world with a gentle look. However, at this moment, there was less hypocritical gentleness on his face and more seriousness. His pitch-black eyes burned with raging flames, completely igniting the hearts of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. All along, they had thought that Jiang Wenyin was a friend worth befriending. Now, everything had proven that their judgment was correct. Jun Lingxuan looked at Jiang Wenyin in disbelief. He found it hard to believe that such childish words would come out of Jiang Wenyan's mouth. Risking my life for my brother? Jun Lingxuan shook his head and looked at Xiao Shou. Then, he turned his head and said with a gloomy expression, Jiang Wenyan, don't be childish. Do you think you're reading a martial arts novel? You are the young master of the Jiang clan. If your father knew that you would say such things, he would definitely be extremely disappointed in you. Perhaps he will be disappointed in me, but as long as I'm not disappointed, it will be fine. Jiang Wenyan smiled faintly. So, Jun Lingxuan, take this. Jun Lingxuan secretly spat, his heart filled with unspeakable anger. These damned bastards could actually make Jiang Wenyan sacrifice so much for them. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it at all. Why? Why did all of this happen? He really wanted to ask God why a guy like Di Beichun could make everyone sacrifice so much for him. Jun Lingxuan didn't realize that behind his annoyance was his crazy jealousy. Chapter 5766. No problem. Jiang Wenyan patted his chest confidently. Jun Lingxuan did not say anything else after seeing that there was no turning back. Even if Jiang Wenyan had broken through, it did not mean that the situation had changed. At most, they could just kill Jiang Wenyan together. The battle between the two sides started again. The sound of weapons clashing was clear and loud in this quiet environment. Just as everyone was fighting, suddenly, a pleasant sound of a zither was heard. The sound of a zither was especially crisp and pleasant in the already quiet environment. Coupled with the echo, it was like music from the heavens, moving one's heart. The crisp and pleasant sound of the zither was full of bitterness and a trace of yearning. However, upon hearing this reply, everyone couldn't help but feel a trace of sadness in their hearts. They couldn't help but shed tears. Everyone stopped their attacks and turned to look in the direction of the sound. They had always thought that there was nothing here, but now it seemed that this was not the case. Although they did not know why it did not appear before, it was obvious that it had appeared now. Everyone looked ahead cautiously. At this time, no one was in the mood to continue fighting. The most important thing was how to deal with the situation in front of them. No matter how pleasant the sound of the zither was, everyone's face was filled with a trace of seriousness, and their hearts were even more cautious. The sound came from there. Di Beichun pointed to the front. That was the place where Jun Lingxuan had been preparing to escape. Since they could not get through, but the sound of the zither was coming, it was really strange. Jun Lingxuan's heart was also filled with horror. Thinking back to the situation in the lake, the sudden appearance of the whirlpool, all of this was extremely strange. If all of this was done by the owner of the zither, then this person's strength must be very terrifying. Even if everyone present joined forces, they might not be able to leave safely. Di Beichun, let's put aside the matter between us for the time being and observe the situation first. What do you think? Jun Lingxuan said. Di Beichun glanced at Jun Lingxuan indifferently. You're lucky. As soon as he said this, Jun Lingxuan could not help but curse. Every time this guy spoke, he had the urge to beat him to death. However, there was nothing he could do. We came here because we heard the zither music. Do you think this is the owner of the pavilion in the middle of the lake? Jiang Wenyan looked ahead and could only see a beam of light. He couldn't see clearly what was in front of him. In his opinion, encountering such a situation in such a quiet and enclosed place was not a good thing. It is indeed possible. Bali Yanche nodded. I think this zither sound is similar to what I heard before. Why don't we go ahead and take a look? Bailey Hongzhuang looked around and said, We don't have any way out. If we want to leave this place, I'm afraid we can only go from the front. Let's go take a look then, Di Beichun said. He wanted to see what was going on ahead. Everyone walked forward together. This time, when they got close, they walked in without a hitch. When we were here before, we couldn't walk in at all. Now we can suddenly walk through. Xiao Shou was stunned. Jun Lingxuan took Xiao Shou's hand and said in a low voice, This place is very mysterious. We can't tell what kind of danger there will be. In short, be careful and don't leave the group. Chapter 5767. As everyone walked towards the light, they realized that the path was much longer than they had imagined. The beam of light looked very close, but it was very far away. As everyone got closer, the sound of the zither became clearer. Most importantly, as they moved forward, the area became wider and wider. The place they were in before was like an underground cave. It was simple and plain, and it carried the power of nature. However, the place they were in now was obviously man-made. The further they went, the more magnificent the environment became. It was like a palace, bright and dazzling and extraordinarily gorgeous. Standing here, everyone even suspected that everything they had seen before was an illusion. How could there be such a huge difference between the two places? What is this place? Jiang Wenyan was stunned. Could this be the world under the lake? Everyone looked at each other. No one could find the answer. Although this was the easiest answer, the lake was obviously not as big as this underground place. The decorations here are extremely luxurious. In addition to the whirlpool from before, I don't know anything else. The only thing I can be sure of is that the owner of this place must be very powerful. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone looked at each other. This was also what they were most worried about. Sister, don't worry. Maybe we can find the mysterious inheritance here. Bai Yin Che smiled faintly and eased the tense atmosphere. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and said with a smile, "What you said is also possible." Previously, when they were in the mystery realm, didn't they also find the inheritance under such circumstances? The cultivators here were very likely from the celestial realm. Then, the inheritance was even more impressive. Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou quietly looked at each other. If the inheritance really existed, then no matter what, they couldn't let Bailey Hongzhuang and the others take it away. Following the sound of the zither, everyone finally saw a graceful figure in the spacious hall. They saw a woman with skin as white as snow, wearing a red dress. Her long hair was like a waterfall, soft like black satin. The red hair accessories added even more radiance to her. Her exquisite features were impeccable. Every frown and smile moved people's souls. What a beautiful woman! Everyone could not help but sigh in their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang and Ling Er, who were present, were also extremely beautiful. Bailey Hongzhuang could be said to be able to captivate the birds and beasts, overshadowing the moon and putting the flowers to shame. Her beauty was confident and flamboyant, and her delicate facial features were like that of a fairy, revealing a trace of heroic spirit, making her unforgettable. Ling Er's beauty, on the other hand, carried a sense of alienation and indifference. It was a kind of ethereal beauty, just like a cold beauty. The woman in front of him was beautiful and flirtatious, like an enchantress. Her fox-like eyes were curled into a charming arc, and her fiery figure was without a doubt. The fair skin on her chest, coupled with her bright red dress, made her look even more charming and alluring. However, at this moment, there was a trace of sadness on her face as she played the zither. She seemed to have endless longing and wanted to share her feelings with her lover. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others appear, the woman stopped playing the zither, and a look of joy appeared on her face. With that smile, everything around him seemed to have lost its luster. "Sir, you're here." Her soft and gentle voice made one's heart go soft. Perhaps it was the best description of a person like her. Even her voice was extremely seductive. Chapter 5768. Everyone was so engrossed in the woman's beauty that they ignored her words. After regaining their senses, everyone felt that it was very strange. Her husband? Who was her husband among the people present? Xiao Sou subconsciously moved closer to Jun Lingxuan. This woman was obviously a vixen. She could not let Jun Lingxuan be seduced by her. However, when faced with such a woman, even a woman could not help but take a few more glances, let alone a man. The woman's smile was like a flower. Her peach blossom eyes were upturned like a lazy cat. Her eyes exuded endless charm. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the woman who had suddenly appeared. After a brief moment of amazement, she regained her senses. It was indeed strange for such a seductive woman to appear in such a secluded place. Moreover, this person had addressed one of the men present as her husband. It was as if she had seen her long-awaited sweetheart. However, this was the first time all of them had come here. It was impossible for them to know this woman. I feel that this situation is a little strange. Let's think of a way to leave this place quickly, Bailey Hongzhuang said. However, after saying this, Bailey Hongzhuang realized that no one responded to her. She could not help but turn her eyes. However, she found that Di Beichun, Bai Li Yin Che, Jiang Wenyan, and Junling Xuan were all staring at the figure in front of them. It was as if they had not heard her at all. Hongzhuang. They seemed to have entered an illusion. Linger sized up the reactions of the four people. The expressions on their faces were almost exactly the same. If this was under normal circumstances, it would be impossible. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. She looked carefully and nodded. Indeed. Look, that woman has also disappeared, Xiao Shou exclaimed. The woman who had been standing not far away a moment ago had suddenly disappeared. There's indeed something strange here. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. I wonder why this illusion has appeared. Obviously, this was an environment that only men would fall into. The three women were not affected at all. Could this be a test? Linger pondered. Perhaps the owner of this place only wants to choose a man to be his successor. Although this kind of situation was rare, it was not impossible. Generally speaking, if the owner of the ruins was a man, he would prefer to find a man to be his inheritor. If it was a woman, she would prefer to find a woman to be her inheritor. However, the tests that everyone usually came into contact with were basically equal. It was really rare to see a situation where they were directly excluded from the start. Perhaps Bailey Hongzhuang felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't figure out what it was. Xiao Shou just looked at Junling Xuan. The current situation was a little awkward for her. Bailey Hongzhuang and Linger could still talk, but she couldn't even get a word in. I wonder who will pass the test. Linger's gaze unconsciously fell on Bai Li Yin Che. Even if they did not enter this illusion, they could roughly guess the content of the environment from the expressions on everyone's faces. This must be a dream full of romantic encounters. A fiery, passionate, and charming beauty took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. Just by thinking about it, one could understand the scene. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun. If he could find himself in this illusion, she believed that Di Beichun could resist this temptation. Chapter 5769. Beichun. Bailey Hongzhuang tried to wake Di Beichun up. Generally speaking, if one was trapped in such an illusion for a long time, it would not end well. If possible, it would be better to leave as soon as possible. Beichun, wake up. However, no matter how Bailey Hongzhuang called out to Di Beichun, he was still trapped in the dream and could not leave at all. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed inwardly. She did not find it strange. She had guessed that it would not be so simple, but she still wanted to try. Illusions were often very realistic, making it impossible for people to realize that they were in an illusion. If one could not see through it on their own, or if the outside world destroyed it, it would be impossible to leave. Just the illusions set up by the powerhouses of the upper realm were already very difficult to break through, let alone the illusions set up by the powerhouses of the immortal domain. It seemed that it would be very difficult for everyone to leave this illusion. Ordinary men are not willing to wake up from this illusion. It's useless even if you call out. Xiao Shou curled her lips. Do you think Di Beichun is really that sincere to you? You could tell at a time like this. Beichun is sincere to Hongzhuang. Don't try to sow discord here, Linger said coldly. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xiao Shou. It seems that you know men quite well. Do you think Junling Xuan can't pass this test? Ordinary men are like that. Xiao Shou's expression was calm. As long as a man is capable, having 3 wives and 4 concubines is not a small number. How many men would reject this kind of throwing oneself into their arms? Among the men here, I'm afraid that no one can escape. Looking at Xiao Shou's expression, which seemed to have seen through everything, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but shake her head. In her eyes, love was the most loyal thing in the world. She understood that Xiao Shou's situation was the majority, but she did not want to be part of this majority. She believed that Beichun also understood this point. Even if what you said makes a lot of sense, I still believe that Beichun wouldn't. Xiao Shou looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. She could feel the strong confidence emanating from the latter, and the smile on her lips was inexplicably dazzling. She did not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang could still be so confident at this time. At least, she didn't, then just wait and see. The truth will tell you everything. Xiao Shou sneered. She had seen too many situations like this in her family. Every woman thought that they could obtain the one and only love, but it turned out to be nothing more than their own fantasy. Of course, there were also some men who did not marry anyone else. That was because their conditions were not as good as that of the first wife, so they did not have the courage. Even if it was Jun Lingxuan, she could not guarantee that he would not have a concubine in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang and Ling looked at each other and did not say anything about this situation. Xiao Shou had already believed that it was normal for men to have multiple wives. This was already a kind of tragedy, and it was useless to say anything more. Just when the three of them were waiting for the four to come out of the illusion, the four suddenly moved. They saw the four of them walking forward together. The expressions on their faces were still somewhat similar, but it could be vaguely seen that there were some differences. They haven't come out of the illusion yet. Let's follow them and see what they're going to do. Bailey Hongzhuang said as she followed them. As the four of them gradually moved forward, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also saw the situation here clearly. Chapter 5770. Bright red, bright and dazzling. Judging from the direction that Di Beiqin and the others were walking, their destination was the red bed. Noticing the bed, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others understood the real situation. If they walked on it, it meant that this illusory realm is really strange. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. I've entered illusory realms before, but after entering, people were usually still in the same place. However, they actually kept walking forward. This kind of feeling feels like it's real. Hongzhuang, is it possible that something like this happened? Linger thought for a moment before saying, actually, that woman hasn't disappeared. It's just that we can't see her, but they can see her. As soon as this was said, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Sei Wu were both surprised. After thinking about it carefully and connecting it to the reactions of the four people, they suddenly felt that all this was very likely. If that was really the case, then this method was really beyond their understanding. Look, there seems to be something on the bed. Xiao Shou pointed at the bed. There was a storage ring on the bed. Because it was red, no one had noticed it before. Only after taking a closer look did they realize it. Could there be some kind of treasure in this storage ring? Xiao Hei came out of the contract space. Previously, because Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to go to the bottom of the lake, he was worried that Xiao Hei wouldn't be able to withstand it, so he recalled her. However, because Bailey Hongzhuang's condition was so terrible that he couldn't even summon her back from the contract space. Now that he had recovered a little, he summoned the little guy back. Seeing the storage ring, Xiao Hei's eyes lit up. As a money grubber, she would never give up on any possibility of getting rich. The storage ring of an immortal region cultivator. Just thinking about it was an incredible reward. Previously, when they were on the battlefield, they saw so many storage rings, but they couldn't take a single one. This storage ring was here. They might be able to get it. Xiao Sei Wu's eyes were also burning. She was now in urgent need of precious cultivation resources to improve her cultivation. Almost without hesitation, Xiao Shou quickly stepped forward, wanting to grab the storage ring on the bed. She definitely couldn't give Bailey Hongzhuang any chance to surpass her. When she saw Xiao Shou's action, Linger immediately tried to stop her, but Bailey Hongzhuang stopped her. Bailey Hongzhuang shook his head. Let her be. Why? Linger frowned. If this opportunity fell into Xiao Shou's hands, it wouldn't be good for them. You'll know. Hearing this, Xiao Hei Hongzhuang Ling, Xiao Hei Hongzhuang, and saw Xiao Hei Hongzhuang. No matter how hard she tried, it was useless. This situation was no different from when she had tried to escape with Jun Lingxuan. If it's really an inheritance, why would Master let someone who hasn't passed the test get it so easily? Bailey Hongzhuang raised his eyebrows. Based on the current situation, he could determine that only these four men could get the storage ring. They had no hope at all. Xiao Shou had been so excited that she had completely forgotten to think about this point. So that's how it is. Ling understood. I actually panicked and forgot about this. Chapter 5771. Perhaps. Bailey Hongzhuang had a complicated look on her face. She did not know why, but the feeling in her heart grew stronger and stronger. However, no matter how hard she thought about it, she could not figure out what the problem was. What exactly is the problem? She muttered to herself. She felt that if she couldn't figure this out, something bad would definitely happen. Xiao Soa looked rather embarrassed after her failure. She remained silent with a gloomy look on her face until she noticed that Di Beichen and the others were getting closer and closer to the bed. She then spoke up. They're getting closer and closer to the bed. I think you're wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen. Her clear eyes were filled with determination. How would you know until the very last moment? Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had spoken, Di Beichen suddenly stopped in his tracks. The footsteps of the other three were still moving forward. Only Di Beichen had stopped. Seeing this, the three of them were shocked. Could it be that their prediction had come true so quickly? They saw Di Beichen frowning as if he was rejecting something. Unfortunately, the three of them could not hear what he was saying. However, they could tell from the determined look on his face. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly curled into a small smile. It seems that her judgment was not wrong. Xiao Sohu was shocked. She never thought that things would turn out this way. Previously, when Di Beichen had rejected her for Bailey Hongzhuang's sake, she had felt that Di Beichen was a hypocrite. However, she could not deny that she had felt a little jealous. At this moment, it was not just a little bit of jealousy. It was a crazy jealousy. Why? How could Di Beichen be so calm when faced with such a beautiful woman? Is Bailey Hongzhuang really that important to him? For the sake of Bailey Hongzhuang, he was willing to resist all temptations? Xiao Sohu had never thought that such a situation would really happen, because such a person had never appeared in her life. Xiao Sohu, it seems that your judgment is wrong. A rare smile appeared on Linger's face. Not all men are like what you said. You just haven't met one yet. Xiao Sohu, who was already in shock, was also stunned after hearing this. It was as if a sharp knife had pierced her heart. It's just that you haven't met them yet. Yes, it was just that she hadn't met him yet. It turned out that such a man really existed. When she thought of this, she looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with even more resentment. Because Di Beichen was her fiancé, she had been engaged since she was a child, but because of a coincidence, he had become Bailey Hongzhuang's man. Noticing the change in Xiao Sohu's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang could also guess what she was thinking. However, she was too lazy to care. She checked the other places in the bedchamber, wondering if there were any other treasures here. She walked to the woman's dressing table. She had to admit that everything here was so exquisite and elegant. If this woman really existed, then the man who had hidden her in this golden house must also be an extraordinary beauty. Just from this arrangement alone, she could feel that he had put in a lot of effort. He really loved this woman. However, she did not know why he could not bring her out to meet others. While Bailey Hongzhuang was looking around, Xiao Sohu was still lost in her own thoughts. It was obvious that she could not figure it out. Chapter 5772. When Di Beichen woke up and looked at the environment in front of him, there was a trace of doubt between his eyebrows. What happened? Did I enter an illusion just now? Linger nodded. That's right. You were the first to break free from the illusion. The other three are still in the illusion. Then what happened to the three of you? Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and asked. Bailey Hongzhuang spread out her hands, a helpless look on her face. This illusion only works on men, so the three of us did not enter the illusion at all. I see. Di Beichen felt a little strange after he understood. This illusion is really interesting. It only works on men. A beauty like that has endless charm for men, but it's not attractive to women at all. On the contrary, they might want to kill her. Xiao He looked at Ling, and the others. That makes sense. However, no one paid any attention to it. Xiao He pursed her lips and said, Male master, you're quite amazing. You can still be Lu Xia Hui under such circumstances and not be tempted. Linger gave a rare smile. That's true. Look at the three of them. They still can't break free from the illusion. This proves that you're sincere to Hongzhuang. Of course I'm sincere to Hongzhuang. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows and walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Wife, I've rejected all temptations. Shouldn't you give me a reward? Bailey Hongzhuang was not in the mood to joke with Di Beichen at this time. Her expression was serious and serious. Beichen, don't you feel that something's wrong? Hearing this, Di Beichen stopped smiling and looked around carefully. What do you mean? I don't know either. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head helplessly. It was precisely because she couldn't figure out what the problem was that she was particularly depressed. I have a feeling that only men can enter this illusion. This illusion itself is a little strange. Moreover, the storage ring that appeared there also has an indescribable feeling. Vaguely, she felt that there was some kind of connection between these things. She was actually very close to discovering it, but she just couldn't pierce through this layer of paper. Only then did Di Beichen notice the storage ring on the bed. I also feel that there's something wrong. It's definitely not a good thing. Xiao So has already tried before. She couldn't touch the ring at all, Linger added. Xiao So's expression revealed a trace of awkwardness, and she remained silent. Beichen, tell us about the situation in the illusion so that we can figure out where the problem lies, Bailey Hongzhuang said in a deep voice. As soon as she said this, Di Beichen's expression changed a little. The look in his eyes changed slightly, and there was a hint of hesitation. Male master, you don't have to worry about it. Based on the situation just now, we know that it must be a very erotic scene. Just tell us directly, Xiao He teased. In response, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also looked calm. They had already guessed this situation. Beichen, where does she want you to go? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked. Di Beichen turned his gaze to the bed and suddenly understood a problem in his mind. She wants us to go to that bed. Everyone's eyes were focused on the bed, and the storage ring on it was particularly eye-catching. Chapter 5773. Once the group understood the situation, they felt that the red storage ring's sparkling light had a demonic air to it. Previously, we had not noticed the appearance of this storage ring until you had arrived. Furthermore, only men can approach this place. Women cannot. This proves that this is selective. Her pitch-black phoenix eyes flashed with a wise light. The more Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, the more serious her expression became. He's choosing someone. Possession. Di Beichen's gaze turned cold. This was a powerful cultivator's method. Some cultivators' souls had managed to escape after they had fallen. Furthermore, they had managed to preserve their souls by coincidence. At a time like this, as long as they could find a suitable cultivator and possess their body, it would be a form of rebirth. Aside from this situation, there was another possibility. Some cultivators had reached a certain level of cultivation and could no longer break through their shackles. As their lifespan neared its end, they would choose to use this method to extend their lifespan. Regardless of which method it was undoubtedly extremely cruel. At this moment, everyone understood what was going on. Why had they been so safe ever since they had arrived here? It must be because this cultivator was only left with his soul. Furthermore, no one had entered the ancient battlefield for many years. When a soul has not found a host for a long time, its power would gradually weaken. Hence, when they were unconscious, the soul could not do anything to them. The only way was for them to actively touch the soul's owner's belongings. Only then would the soul be able to seize the opportunity to invade their body. Furthermore, with the addition of this illusion, everything would become very simple. However, any possession would require the cultivator to actively touch his belongings. Otherwise, he would not be able to approach them directly. Actually, as long as there's a storage ring, no one would be able to resist the urge to touch it, right? Xiao He was a little puzzled. Wasn't this a little superfluous? Perhaps this soul has some special fetish. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. There's another possibility. The illusion can increase his power. However, this is not the most important thing now. We must not let Yin Che and the others touch this storage ring. Otherwise, based on the strength of their souls, they would not be able to resist this old monster. Her exquisite and dazzling face was filled with anxiety and worry. Once a body has been possessed, even if the physical body remains the same, the soul would have been replaced. It would no longer be a familiar person. After Bailey Hongzhuang analyzed the situation, everyone became nervous. Bailey Yin Che and the others were already very close to the bed. If it didn't stop them now, it would really be too late. Yin Che, wake up! Bailey Hongzhuang stood in front of Bailey Yin Che and shook his body, trying to wake him up. No matter what, she couldn't let anything happen to Yin Che. Wenyin, wake up! This is an illusion. Di Beichen walked to Jiang Wenyin's side. In his eyes, Jiang Wenyin was a close friend who he could entrust his life to. At a time like this, he absolutely could not watch Jiang Wenyin die. Xiao Shou also desperately pulled Jun Lingxuan. She didn't know whether Bailey Hongzhuang's analysis was correct or not, but the risk was too terrifying. This situation was even more terrifying than death, because no one knew what the other party would do with their body. Chapter 5774. No matter how hard they tried to wake them up, it was to no avail. This illusory realm was simply too powerful. Their tiny efforts were completely useless. Most importantly, as the group tried to forcefully stop them, a restrictive spell suddenly appeared. They couldn't even touch their bodies. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang immediately attacked the restrictive spell, only to find that it was completely useless. Her power only caused a few imperceptible ripples on the restrictive spell before dissipating into nothingness. Damn it! Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but curse. Her icy face was filled with urgency. Yin Che and Jiang Wenyin didn't have anyone they liked. Under these circumstances, it was simply too difficult to resist. Just the thought of watching this happen right before their very eyes was simply unbearable. Ling and Di Beichen also tried to break the restrictive spell without any hesitation. However, even after combining everyone's strength, it was still to no avail. What do we do now? Ling couldn't help but look at Bailey Yin Che. Although they had many conflicts on a daily basis, she didn't feel good when she thought about what might happen to this guy next. Bailey Hongzhuang was silent. The other party was very powerful. Under these circumstances, they couldn't do anything at all. In the next instant, Bailey Hongzhuang took out pills and handed them to Ling and Di Beichen. We can't think of anything for the time being. The only thing we can do is to recover as soon as possible. Di Beichen's expression darkened. He understood what Bailey Hongzhuang meant. If they really couldn't do anything, then the only thing they could do was to recover as soon as possible. Once the other party succeeded in taking over their bodies, they would all be in great danger. Xiaohei, you and Ling check around to see if there's a way out. Di Beichen and I will think of a way to wake them up from the illusory realm. All right. Xiaohei and Ling immediately began to look around. They had originally thought that this was a good place, but now it seemed to be a completely evil place. Bailey Hongzhuang tried to use the power of light to break the illusion, but her current state was not enough. She had to take out the holy maiden crystal. From a moment the saintess crystal appeared, a rich light energy bloomed, illuminating the surroundings even more. The moment Xiao Shou saw the saintess crystal, her eyes flashed with a complicated light. She was undoubtedly very familiar with the saintess crystal. She had also seen the saintess crystal in the past few years. Originally, he thought that the saintess crystal would be given to him in the end. Who would have thought that it would fall into the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang? Bailey Hongzhuang channeled her power into the saintess crystal, and the saintess crystal's light energy became even denser. When the light bloomed, everyone noticed that Bailey Yin Che and the others' faces flashed with a hint of struggle, as if they were affected by something. Bailey Hongzhuang's face lit up. It seemed that the power of light was indeed helpful in this situation. As long as everyone could wake up from the illusion, the other party would not be able to take over their body successfully, and they would be able to leave safely. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. As long as it was effective, it was fine. Bailey Hongzhuang used the power of light, hoping to completely wake everyone up from the illusion. Just as everyone saw the light, they suddenly realized that Bailey Hongzhuang had stopped moving. Wife, what's wrong? Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. His expression changed when he saw her. Chapter 5775. Wifey, Di Beichen called out again. Bailey Hongzhuang still didn't respond. At this moment, Di Beichen confirmed his guess. Hong Zhuang has also fallen into an illusion. How can this be? Xiao So was dumbfounded. They had finally seen the light at the end of the tunnel. If Bailey Hong Zhuang had also fallen into an illusion, they would really be at their wits' end. The owner of this place is more powerful than we thought. It's obvious that he's very skilled in creating illusions. Because there's no way to stop Hong Zhuang, he let her fall into an illusion. Di Beichun turned to look at Ling. Have you found a way out? Ling shook her head. Her pretty face was full of anxiety. No, this place is completely sealed off. We can't find any exit at all. This place is really too strange. When I walked in that direction earlier, I realized that we couldn't go back to where we came from, Xiao Hei said in a low voice. This place is really strange. Xiao Bai looked around, unwilling to let go of any chance that there might be a trap. It believed that there was definitely a way out. It just hadn't found it yet. Di Beichun's expression darkened. It looked like the owner of this place had made up his mind to keep all of them here. Yin Che and the others are getting closer and closer to the bed. We can't stop them. Ling Er's face was pale. This situation was really too despairing. It seemed like there was no way out at all. Xiao So also looked like she was about to break down. They might really have to die. At this moment, Bai Li Yin Che suddenly stopped in his tracks. Look, Bai Li Yin Che's expression has changed. Xiao Bai exclaimed as she pointed at him. Hearing this, everyone turned to look. As expected, Bai Li Yin Che didn't continue forward. How is this possible? Xiao So was stunned. If she had not seen Jiang Wenyin and Junling Xuan still moving forward, she would not have believed that Bai Li Yin Che could break through such an illusion. Di Beichun's feelings for Bailey Hong Zhuang were too deep, so he could not be bewitched by other women. But Bai Li Yin Che did not seem to have a sweetheart at all. How did he break the illusion? After Bai Li Yin Che broke out of the illusion, he quickly regained his consciousness. His reaction was the same as Di Beichun's. What's going on? Xiao Hei quickly recounted everything that had happened and asked in confusion. Yin Che, how were you able to resist temptation? Bai Li Yin Che was stunned. He subconsciously glanced at Ling only to discover that Ling was also looking at him. His eyes flickered as he said, "She's not my type." As soon as he said this, everyone looked doubtful. If he didn't like such a beauty, then what type did he like? No matter what, it's a good thing that you broke the illusion. Di Beichun patted Bai Li Yin Che's shoulder. His gaze then landed on Jiang Wenyin. Now I'm just worried about Wenyin. I hope he can break the illusion. Master should be able to break it soon, right? Xiao Hei asked worriedly. Di Beichun nodded slightly. Hong Zhuang is a light attribute cultivator, so it's relatively easy for her to break the illusion. Furthermore, she knows that there's an illusion here, so she should be able to break it soon. With regards to this, he completely believed in Bailey Hong Zhuang's ability. In fact, Ling and Bai Li Yin Che also thought so. Master had always been rational, so it was not difficult for him to break the illusion. Chapter 5776. Kacha. With a crisp sound, Bailey Hong Zhuang opened her eyes. The illusion had been completely dispelled. Wife, you're awake? Di Beichun immediately noticed Bailey Hong Zhuang's movements. His handsome face was filled with joy. He knew that Hong Zhuang would definitely be able to dispel the illusion. Moreover, with the Holy Maiden crystal in her hands, the illusion would not affect her much. However, he did not expect her to be so fast. It was beyond his imagination. Bailey Hong Zhuang nodded slightly. It's all thanks to the Holy Maiden crystal. The illusion did not affect me much. In the next moment, she noticed Bai Li Yin Che and asked in surprise, Bai Li Yin Che, you dispelled the illusion? Bai Li Yin Che smiled faintly. Although it was a little slow, I managed to dispel it in the end. That's good. Bailey Hong Zhuang was relieved and turned to look at Jiang Wenyin and Junling Xuan. It would be best if the two of them could dispel the illusion. However, if they could not, it would be troublesome. Perhaps all of them would have to stay here. Bailey Hong Zhuang used the Holy Maiden crystal once again to display the power of light. Although the effect was not too great, it still had some effect. Just as he was about to sit on the bed, a look of struggle flashed across Jiang Wenyin's face. Then he woke up. Wenyin, come back quickly. Di Beichun hurriedly called out. Jiang Wenyan was just rejoicing when he heard Di Beichen's words. Although he did not understand what had happened, he immediately rushed back to everyone's side and looked ahead fearfully. What happened? The power of the Holy Maiden Crystal was still being emitted. Everyone noticed that Jun Lingxuan's emotions were also somewhat affected. Lingxuan, wake up quickly, Xiao Shou hurriedly shouted. After seeing that everyone had regained their senses, Xiao Shou became even more anxious. Most importantly, all the men had resisted the temptation. Why was Jun Lingxuan the only exception? This made her feel particularly unhappy, but the most important thing at the moment was Jun Lingxuan's life, so she couldn't care about this for the time being. Jun Lingxuan had already sat on the bed, and his right hand touched the storage ring. Just as he was about to touch the storage ring, the Saintess crystal shone brightly, and Jun Lingxuan was also awakened from the illusion. Jun Lingxuan, don't touch that ring. Di Beichen noticed that Jun Lingxuan's expression froze. He knew that Jun Lingxuan had exited the illusion and quickly reminded him. Ling Sun, come back quickly. There's something wrong with that ring. Xiao Shou also shouted. Jun Lingxuan turned his head, looked at everyone looking at him, and then said to Xiao Shou with a chuckle, "So, how can you listen to them and not want such a good treasure? It's very likely that there's a soul there that will take over the body. Don't touch it." Jun Lingxuan looked at the ring in front of him and said with a chuckle, "Really? They can also judge this kind of thing? In short, don't touch it no matter what." In her view, the previous reaction of Bailey Hongzhuang and others didn't seem to be fake. What she wanted most was to leave here safely. As for the treasure, she didn't care. Jun Lingxuan's eyes flashed a trace of hesitation. He also felt a little strange about the situation at the moment, but the ring was placed in front of him, which was really too tempting. Chapter 5777. The two of them charged towards Jun Lingxuan in a flash. However, when they got close, they were suddenly bounced back by an invisible force. When they realized this, everyone was shocked. They were not surprised that such a situation would occur before the illusion was broken. However, now that the illusion has been broken, why was this happening? This sudden turn of events stunned everyone present. This was completely different from the previous situation. How could this be? Linger was puzzled. Countless thoughts flashed through Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. However, the most important thing now was to stop Jun Lingxuan. Jun Lingxuan, don't touch that ring. Otherwise, you'll regret it. Jun Lingxuan chuckled. He did not believe Bailey Hongzhuang's words at all. Don't try to lie to me. Only I've passed the test. This is my inheritance. If you want to take it away from me, there's no way. If Jun Lingxuan still had some doubts before, after seeing that everyone had been blocked, he gained a little more confidence. In the next moment, Jun Lingxuan's hand reached for the storage ring. "No!" Xiao Shou shouted. However, it was clearly too late. This was because Jun Lingxuan had already touched the ring. After picking up the ring, Jun Lingxuan sneered at everyone. "Didn't you want to snatch this storage ring? Stop dreaming. This is my inheritance?" Xiao Shou felt relieved after seeing that Jun Lingxuan was fine. She immediately glared at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Could it be that these guys had been lying to her earlier? Inheritance. Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. Wasn't it a romantic encounter? How could it be an inheritance? Jiang Wenyan nodded gently. The previous scene was indeed as you had described. However, there was a test after that. When I was undergoing the test, I felt a force, so I retreated and regained my consciousness. There was actually such a change? Linger was stunned. Had they guessed the beginning correctly, but not the end? Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. According to their judgment, there shouldn't be any problems with what they had guessed before, but the situation that happened later was indeed unexpected. Jun Lingxuan sneered. "Loser. Say Wu, you have been deceived by them." Xiao Shou quickly walked to Jun Lingxuan's side, her face full of disgust. "I didn't expect their acting skills to be so good." Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say anything else. Although the situation in front of her was indeed beyond her expectations, this kind of assessment was really too strange. Jun Lingxuan, since you've obtained the inheritance, you should know where the exit is, right? Di Beichen turned to look at Jun Lingxuan, only to see a smug look on the latter's face. Jun Lingxuan sneered. I know, but why should I tell you? The heavens are really blind. Xiao Bai shook her head and sighed. Such a good opportunity had fallen into Jun Lingxuan's hands. This was too difficult to accept. Wen Yin, I've affected you. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little apologetic. If she hadn't affected Jiang Wenyin, perhaps this inheritance would have belonged to Jiang Wenyin. Hearing this, Jiang Wenyin chuckled. If it's meant to be, it will be. If it's not meant to be, don't force it. What's more, your original intention was to save me. I don't think this thing belongs to me. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others saw this, their hearts were also slightly warm. Jiang Wenyin being able to say such words was really touching. Chapter 5778. Ah! A shrill scream was heard. Jun Lingxuan, who was originally proud of himself, suddenly widened his eyes, and his expression was extremely ferocious. The sudden change shocked everyone present. They looked at Jun Lingxuan in shock, not knowing what was going on. Jun Lingxuan clutched his head crazily, the veins on his handsome face bulging. His expression was extremely terrified, and he struggled in pain like a ghost. Lingxuan, what's wrong? Xiao Shou hurriedly grabbed Jun Lingxuan's arm, her delicate face full of panic. What happened? What's wrong with you? However, Jun Lingxuan could not answer at all. He could only struggle in pain. In just a short period of time, he could not even stand. He rolled on the ground in pain, and his expression was horrified and ferocious. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, and their minds confirmed their previous guess. It seems that our judgment may not be wrong. Bailey Hongzhuang looked up at Di Beichun with a trace of shock and horror. This powerful cultivator's methods are more brilliant than we thought, Di Beichun said in a low voice. As soon as he said this, Jiang Wenyin and the others completely understood. The other party had deliberately set up a trap. First, he used an illusion to directly lure everyone to take the ring. Then, perhaps because of the Saintess Crystal's influence, he had no choice but to set up an illusion for the test. This way, they would think that the storage ring was an inheritance and would not have any scruples when picking it up. As for why Jun Lingxuan was fine when he picked up the ring, it was because his spiritual power had not seeped into the storage ring. Just now, he had done so, and the possession had begun. Although everyone knew about the possession, it was the first time they had seen a real possession. Once the other party had carried out the possession, unless a powerful cultivator appeared to wipe out the other party's soul, it was obvious that with their strength, they could not deal with a powerful cultivator from the immortal region. Even if this person had been dead for many years, the power of his soul was still very terrifying. Let's find a way to get out of here. Di Beichun's expression turned solemn. Perhaps they still had a chance to leave this place before the other party succeeded in seizing the body. However, if the other party succeeded in seizing the body, it would definitely take everyone's lives. Everything here was set up by this person. Under such circumstances, it was too difficult for them to deal with this person. As for Jun Lingxuan stopping the other party from possessing his body, no one even considered this point. It was impossible. He couldn't possibly succeed. After everyone heard Di Beichun's words, they didn't dare to delay any longer. They started to look around for a way to leave this place. Only Xiao Shou sat beside Jun Lingxuan in a panic. She looked at the latter's painful expression, but there was nothing she could do to help. Bailey Hongzhuang, don't you have the holy maiden crystal? Quickly help Ling's son. Xiao Shou wiped away the tears on her face and rushed to Bailey Hongzhuang. She grabbed her arm tightly with both hands and looked frantic and anxious. Don't even think about running away. Quickly help him. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned and flung Xiao Shou's hand away. Xiao Shou, we've already advised him, but he didn't listen. Have you forgotten how you acted just now? Now you have a nerve to ask me for help. Chapter 5779. After seeing Xiao Shou's unreasonable appearance, everyone sighed in their hearts. The thickness of this guy's skin was simply amazing. Just a moment ago, she and Jun Lingxuan were still sneering at them, and now she was asking them to do all kinds of things in a commanding tone. Wasn't this a joke? In his situation, outsiders can't save him at all. Aren't you also good at light power? Why don't you try it yourself? Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xiao Sou in disgust. If you want to leave here, find the exit. Otherwise, wait to be buried with him. So, save me. Jun Lingxuan stretched out his hand and looked at Xiao Sou in pain. Xiao Sou quickly rushed to Jun Lingxuan's side. Jun Lingxuan, it will be fine. Get him out of your mind. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked around and found that the situation was just as Linger said before. This was a dead end, and there was no way to leave it all. How can there be no way? Jiang Wenyin looked around in disbelief. Wherever they came to a place, there must be a way. How could there be nothing? This place is really strange. Di Beichun turned his eyes to look at Jun Lingxuan and found that the latter's struggle was getting weaker and weaker. He immediately said in a deep voice, "The other party is about to succeed in seizing the body. If we can't find the exit, it will be really troublesome. Damn it, we actually came to such a broken place." Bali Yin-che was annoyed. Judging from the current situation, there was only one person who knew the way to leave here, and that was the owner of this place. Obviously, the other party would not tell them. Xiren and the others wouldn't have encountered such a situation, right? That would be terrible. Bali Yin-che couldn't help but think of the situation of Xiren and Shangwan Yingying at that time. They all came here listening to the zither sound. I don't think so. Di Beichun shook his head. The test at the lake is very difficult. If the other party wanted to possess the body, they wouldn't need to spend so much effort. If the requirements are too high, most people won't be able to enter. Naturally, you won't have the chance to possess someone. Then why is it like this here? Linger was puzzled. One was at the pavilion in the middle of the lake, while the other was at the bottom of the lake. There should be some kind of connection between the two. If I'm not wrong, the owner of this place is just using the pavilion as an opportunity. Because the pavilion in the middle of the lake was very eye-catching, any cultivator who came here would definitely think of a way to enter the pavilion. He arranged everything under the lake so that when cultivators appear, they could be swept into this place. It's much more convenient than other places. There were quite a number of cultivators earlier as well. Why weren't they swept down? Jiang Wenyin asked doubtfully. This did not seem to make sense. Bailey Hongzhuang said, "That's because he has requirements for the host he chooses. If the cultivator's physical quality was too poor, it meant that it would be extremely difficult for him to use this body to raise his cultivation to a higher level. When that happened, he would inevitably have to look for a new body. However, if he could find a good body directly, he wouldn't need to spend so much effort." At this moment, Jun Lingxuan, who was struggling, suddenly stopped. A devilish smile suddenly appeared on his handsome face. Chapter 5780. TSK, you guys are pretty smart. You've already figured everything out in such a short time. Jun Lingxuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others with a faint smile. Originally, I had my eyes on this body, but it's a pity that even such a woman can't charm you. Following Jun Lingxuan's gaze, everyone realized that the person he had his eyes on was Di Beichun. Di Beichun's expression was slightly cold. Possession was something worse than death. At this moment, everyone understood that Jun Lingxuan was already dead. Even if the person in front of them looked exactly like Jun Lingxuan, he was not the real Jun Lingxuan. Xiao Sou stared blankly at the familiar, yet unfamiliar man in front of her. His appearance was still the same as before, and there was no change at all. However, his gaze and demeanor were slightly different. Most importantly, the way he looked at her was no longer as friendly and familiar as before. Her Jun Lingxuan was gone. His soul had been wiped out by this despicable guy in front of her. No! Xiao Sou screamed at the top of her lungs. She fell into paranoia and madness. She pulled Jun Lingxuan's clothes and shook him hysterically. "You despicable guy!" quickly returned Jun Lingxuan. Jun Lingxuan only glanced coldly at Xiao Sou and casually threw her aside. Bang! Xiao Sou's body fell heavily onto the wall and then slid down. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Xiao Sou's expression collapsed and sorrowful. It was not easy for her and Jun Lingxuan's hearts to be connected, but now something like this happened. It was really hard for her to accept. Why was her life so bitter? She regretted it so much. Why didn't she see through everything earlier like Bailey Hongzhuang? Originally, She still had a chance to save everything, but she didn't think about it carefully at all, so she missed the best opportunity. If she had resolutely told Jun Lingxuan to give up instead of coveting such a reward, then this wouldn't have happened. And now, Jun Lingxuan was no longer the original Jun Lingxuan. If he used Jun Lingxuan's identity to do something out of line, what should she do? Jun Lingxuan stood up, shook his head, and stretched his body. A few cracking sounds could be heard, and then a happy smile appeared on his face. Although I didn't get the skin I wanted the most, this one isn't bad either. It's been a long time since I've experienced this feeling. The feeling of being able to move freely is wonderful. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at the guy in front of them cautiously. This guy didn't look like a good person at first glance. His way of doing things was strange. Congratulations, Senior. Di Beichen cupped his hands and probed. We promise that we won't spread this matter. We hope that Senior will be magnanimous and let us live. Following Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at Jun Lingxuan with fear. Although the possibility was small, they still had to give it a try. Hearing this, Jun Lingxuan raised his eyebrows, and his gaze swept over Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Do you think I'm afraid of you spreading the matter of me possessing your body? Who do you think you are? Jun Lingxuan's face turned cold, and his eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty, killing intent. You try to stop me from possessing your body in every way possible, and now you still want to leave here alive. His cold voice carried a boundless chill, making people feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Chapter 5781. At this moment, everyone's hearts sank. It seemed that the other party had made up his mind and would not let them go. If they could not find a way to leave this place, death would be the only way out for them. Quick, think of a way to leave. Everyone could not help but take a few steps back. They were afraid that the other party would attack soon. Leave. Jun Lingxuan chuckled. Haven't you already looked for an exit? You can't find the exit at all. You'll all die here. As soon as he finished speaking, Jun Lingxuan immediately attacked everyone. A tyrannical aura could be felt, causing everyone's blood to surge. After the man had taken over Jun Lingxuan's body, his cultivation level was only at the Radiant Moon stage. However, the power of his soul was extremely terrifying. Just by sensing the power of his soul, everyone understood that they were no match for him. This person's power was simply too terrifying. How powerful were the cultivators of the ancient battlefield? Even so, everyone had died here and their souls had dissipated into nothingness. This person was able to maintain his soul's integrity in such an environment and was not destroyed even after so many years. His power must have been extremely terrifying when he was alive. Although he was restricted by Jun Lingxuan's body and could not unleash his full power, his future achievements would definitely be extremely terrifying if he was given some time. At this moment, everyone was not only worried about their own safety, they were even more worried about what kind of changes Jun Lingxuan would bring to the upper realm if he were to leave this place. What would happen to the Di family, the Lin family, and the Bailey family? It would be fine if he were to live his own life. However, if he were to return to the Jun family, it would be a huge disaster. Bang! Di Beichen and Bai Li Yanche were defeated in a single blow. Their opponent's spiritual power was too terrifying. Under such pressure, they could not unleash their powers at all. Are we all going to die here? Ling Er revealed her true form and attacked Jun Lingxuan with her dragon tail. Jun Lingxuan grabbed the dragon tail with a disdainful look in his eyes. The dragon clan is indeed not bad. However, after becoming a contract beast, your powers are nothing much. In the blink of an eye, everyone was severely injured. Don't struggle anymore. Isn't it better to die here quietly? If I hadn't brought you here, you would have died already. Jun Lingxuan chuckled. Who are you? Bailey Hongzhuang asked coldly. He chuckled and looked around casually. His face was full of joy. Since you're going to die anyway, I'll tell you. Remember my name, Qing Devil. Qing's Devil. After hearing this name, everyone looked at the man in front of them. Devil, indeed, was somewhat compatible with his appearance. From now on, Jun Lingxuan doesn't exist anymore. Qing Devil laughed. So do you? Bailey Hongzhuang took out the Saintess crystal and injected all her energy into it. At this moment, there was no other way. Most importantly, there was a layer of mysterious restriction in this strange place. She could not bring everyone into the Chaos Ring. She could take out the items, but she could not leave. Bailey Hongzhuang could not figure it out. The situation gave her an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if she was about to figure out something. Chapter 5782. This thing is not bad. The next moment, Qing Devil stretched out his hand, intending to grab the Saintess crystal directly. Bailey Hongzhuang held the Saintess crystal tightly. This thing was very important to her, and she couldn't allow it to be taken away by others. However, she also knew that it was too difficult for her to stop Qing Devil with her current strength. However, the situation was a little unexpected. After Qing Devil made his move, the Saintess crystal suddenly gave out a ray of light, which prevented him from taking the thing away. What? Qing Devil uttered in surprise. At the same time, another ray of dazzling light flashed, with a hint of cyan vaguely in this ray. Then, everyone felt that their injuries were healing rapidly under this ray of light. They were seriously injured in the lake. Except for Jun Lingxuan, Xiao Sou, and Jiang Wenyan, the others had only regained their ability to move, but their injuries were still not fully healed. Under the influence of this power, they found that their injuries were healing rapidly. Bailey Hongzhuang was pleasantly surprised. She had always known that the Saintess crystal had healing effects, but she hadn't been able to master the method after studying it for such a long time. She didn't expect that she would find the method to use it in such a critical situation today. After Di Beichen and the others recovered from their injuries, their combat strength also improved a lot. Before, their injuries were healed, and their opponents were much stronger than them, so they were no match for them at all. Now their injuries were healed. Although the gap between them was still obvious, they were better off now. It's useless, Qing Devil said coldly. As long as you die, this thing will still fall into my hands. Qing Devil didn't turn his eyes, but he noticed that everyone was determined to fight to the death. He shook his head and said, "You really won't give up until all hope is gone. Then I'll send you to hell." As soon as he finished his words, Qing Devil suddenly attacked with his right hand. His first target was Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing this, Di Beichen rushed up quickly and stood in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Qing Devil snorted, "You really love each other, but you can only be lovers in hell." Bang, bang, bang. Di Beichen faced the Qing Devil head-on. Even though Jun Lingxuan had just broken through to the Radiant Moon tier, the strength that the Qing Devil displayed was far greater than that. Bai Li Yin Che and the others didn't hesitate either. If they didn't try their best to stall the Qing Devil, they would all die here once they were defeated one by one. While attacking Qing Devil, Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking about how to get out of here. It was too difficult to defeat the Qing Devil together. Running away was the only way to survive. Boom! Qing Devil's power suddenly exploded. His mind power spread out, and everyone was sent flying. Bang, bang. One by one, the figures smashed into the wall and fell to the ground, heavily injured. Idiot! Qing Devil looked down at them condescendingly and stretched his body. "I'll give you a quick death. If you don't want it, I can only let you know what pain is." In the next moment, Qing Devil stretched out his hand and grasped Bailey Hongzhuang's neck with an invisible force. "Let me go." Bailey Hongzhuang was suspended in the air. No matter how hard she struggled, she couldn't get rid of the force at all. Di Beichen rushed up quickly, but he couldn't touch the force at all. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang struggling in pain, his heart was bleeding. Chapter 5783. At this moment, Di Beichen recalled the scene when he was practicing his sword on the river. He thought of Zhongli Mu's indomitable and boundless sword qi. He suddenly waved the sharp sword in his hand and gathered all his strength at the tip of the sword. He put aside all distracting thoughts and focused all his energy on the sharp sword. Almost at this moment, everyone was acutely aware that Di Beichen's energy had reached an unprecedented peak. Even Qing Devil, who had never taken Di Beichen seriously, couldn't help but change his expression at this moment, because he felt a sense of threat from this sword. How could this be? From Jun Lingshuan's soul, Qing Devil knew that these people were from the upper world, and this kind of sword chi should only appear in the immortal realm. How could the man in front of him reach such a level without any teacher? Swoosh! A bright and dazzling sword chi shot out from the tip of Debachen's sword. Even though they were far away, everyone could feel the terrifying sword chi. It was extremely sharp and indomitable. Even though the sharp sword wasn't pointed at them, they felt that their skin was about to split under the influence of the sword chi. Bai Li Yin-che and the others looked at Di Beichun in amazement. They didn't expect Di Beichun to be able to use such a sword move. This kind of momentum and power, even though it was not as powerful as Zhongli Mu's, was still outstanding. Qing Devil had to dodge the sword chi, so he loosened his control over Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang fell to the ground, gasping for breath. If it wasn't for Bei Chen's help, she really wouldn't have been able to keep her life. When she looked up again, she found a wound on Qing Devil's face. Blood was flowing out from the wound, and his expression became more and more sinister. I didn't expect you to be so powerful that you could hurt me. Qing Devil looked at Di Beichen coldly. I never show mercy to those who hurt my face. You're dead meat. His pitch-black eyes filled with endless killing intent and threat. Azure Demon's figure flashed, rushing towards Bailey Hongzhuang. This kind of killing intent was far stronger than before. Noticing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were also in a panic. They all picked up their swords and tried to use the swordsmanship that they had been practicing for a while. Although it was only one move, it was extremely powerful. After Jiang Wenyan saw Di Bei Chun display that move, his heart was full of shock. If this move was aimed at him, then he would not be able to avoid it at all. What he did not expect was that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had actually learned this trick. This was too unexpected. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were practicing together. The Azure Demon naturally did not dare to be so careless after suffering once. He would not be able to accept it if his face was hurt again. Then they found that their bodies were confined by a powerful force, and they couldn't move at all. Qing Devil grabbed Di Beichen's neck tightly. His gloomy eyes were like glaciers in the North Pole. I want you to die miserably. Di Beichun tried his best to resist. His opponent's spiritual strength was too terrifying. He felt that the Azure Demon was probably in existence on the same level as Senior Yu. The moment Di Beichun was controlled, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart tightened. An indescribable fear spread in her heart. This feeling was even more terrifying than when she was facing death. She couldn't accept Di Beichun dying in front of her. Chapter 5784. I can't die here. This thought kept echoing in Bailey Hongzhuang's mind. Get out of here. The only way is to get out of here. Everyone attacked Qing Devil. Even if they knew that they couldn't change the outcome, they had to do it. The atmosphere became tragic. Everyone was ready to risk their lives. They didn't want to be born in the same year and month, but they wanted to die in the same year and month. It was not the worst ending if they could die here together. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang flew backward again and spat out a mouthful of blood uncontrollably. Her pretty face was as pale as a piece of paper. The despair from the bottom of her heart made her collapse. The people in front of her were the people she cherished the most. Were they all going to die here today? She couldn't help but look at the chaos ring in her hand. Why couldn't it bring them in this time? Why? Suddenly, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on the red zither in front of her. Something seemed to break in her mind. She suddenly found a way to solve the problem that she couldn't figure out. That's right. That's the problem. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She finally understood everything. It wasn't that the chaos ring lost its effect, but that she was in the dreamland now. They had been in the dreamland since they entered here. It wasn't just one dreamland. It was the overlapping of many dreamlands. Until now, they were still in the dreamland and hadn't really gone out. That was why the chaos ring didn't respond. The zither was the most likely to break the dreamland, because it was the sound of the zither that attracted them here. No matter how real the dreamland was, there would be a way to break it. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang dragged her seriously injured body and rushed to the zither when Qing Devil wasn't paying attention to her. After noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's movement, Qing Devil became anxious. He rushed to Bailey Hongzhuang directly, leaving Di Beichen and the others behind. At the same time, Di Beichen and the others finally noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. For a moment, they didn't even understand the use of a zither. Bailey Hongzhuang could feel the terrifying attack behind her, but she didn't turn around to look, even if the attack was about to land on her. There was only one thought in her mind, and that was to smash this zither. Only by smashing the zither would they be able to leave this huge illusion. Even if she died, it was still good that someone was still alive. Crack! With a crisp sound, the zither fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Almost at the same time that the zither was broken, everyone felt that the surrounding environment was rapidly collapsing. It was no longer the same as before. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes as if she had already accepted her fate. The sky was blue, and white clouds floated in the sky. Bailey Hongzhuang did not feel the terrifying attack. Instead, she fell into a warm embrace. It was Di Beichen. Just from that familiar aura, she knew that it was Di Beichen. Oh my God, am I hallucinating? We're out. Jiang Wenyin looked at the strange and wonderful environment around him in shock. This sudden change made him feel incredulous. 1 second ago, they were still in the shadow of death. How could they be safe now? Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes. Looking at the blue sky, white clouds, and green grass in front of her, she had never felt so happy before. Chapter 5785. Honey, we're all right. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile. His handsome face was full of tenderness. You saved all of us. Bailey Yin-che and the others came forward. At this moment, everyone was immersed in the joy of surviving a disaster. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't broken the zither at the last moment, they would have gone to the netherworld. It's really hard to imagine. I thought I was going to die. Jiang Wenyin couldn't hide the surprise on his face. What happened today was really unbelievable. Hongzhuang, you saved me twice. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't stopped him with the help of the Saintess Crystal, he probably wouldn't have been able to resist the temptation of the storage ring. Once he touched it, he would be the one who was possessed. Thinking back, he felt that it was really terrible. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Fortunately, my judgment was right. Otherwise, I would inevitably feel guilty. Jiang Wenyin waved his hand. I really owe it to you this time. Speaking of which, you are really amazing. You can even make such a judgment. If Jun Lingxuan didn't believe you, he wouldn't be in such a situation now. Hearing this, everyone shook their heads and sighed. Jun Lingxuan had always been their enemy. They originally wanted to find an opportunity to kill him. However, they didn't expect that Jun Lingxuan would disappear in such a way. Sister, how did you think of breaking the zither to save us? Until now, Bailey Yin-che was still a little confused. He didn't understand what had happened before. Everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. They were also very curious about this. In fact, when the Qing Devil appeared, I always felt that there was something wrong that we ignored. At the critical moment, I knew that there was only one way to survive, and that was to leave here. I thought that the Qing Devil was just a soul, but the place where we were was extremely beautiful. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a soul to do this. In addition, we've seen that beauty before, but then that beauty appeared in your illusion. This doesn't make sense in itself. The only explanation was that we were already in an illusion from the moment we entered the sleeping chamber, and the illusion that appeared after that was the superposition of several illusions. The Qing Devil is really good at illusions. Even with the Saintess Crystal, I was still troubled for such a long time. After listening to the explanation, everyone finally understood what was going on. This kind of illusion technique really made people gasp in amazement and was too shocking. Now that I've figured it out, I feel that I was too stupid before. How could I not figure out such a simple thing? Qing Devil is really too clever. Jiang Wenyin sighed. His opponent's methods were truly impossible to guard against. Because it was too real, he never thought that he had entered an illusion from the very beginning. No matter what, we managed to keep our lives. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded with a smile. Although they had experienced a lot of risks, their lives were saved in the end. If they hadn't experienced this, perhaps they wouldn't have been able to return to the shore at the bottom of the lake. Overall, they had escaped danger. Master, why is Xiao So missing? Xiao He suddenly asked in confusion. Chapter 5786. Previously, everyone was immersed in joy. Besides, Xiao So was not their friend, so they did not notice her disappearance. Now that Xiao He mentioned it, they realized that Xiao So did not come out with them. Logically speaking, everyone should have come out when the illusion is broken. Why didn't Xiao So come out? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. She did not have a good impression of Xiao So. It was not a bad thing for her to disappear. However, the current situation was indeed unexpected. Before I left, I heard Xiao So scream, but I didn't take it to heart. Did Nan Wei fail to escape at the last moment? Lingo asked. That's possible. At that time, Xiao So was the closest to Qing Devil, Bali Yanche said thoughtfully. Forget it. Anyway, even if Xiao So comes out alive, she can't escape death. Why should we care? Di Baichen looked calm. The conflict between them and Xiao So and Jun Lingxuan was getting worse and worse. It had already reached the point where only one of them could survive. Although the incident this time was somewhat out of their expectations, it was undeniable that the two of them had completely disappeared. Why didn't Qing Devil come out? Xiaobao was a little confused. Since it was an illusion, they might be together after it was broken. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. I don't know, but I think this illusion should be very important to him. When I threw the zither, he looked very nervous. Maybe he was also affected by the destruction of the illusion. That's why he didn't come out. Regarding this, no one asked any more questions. The Azure Fiend's illusions were beyond their reach. It would be impossible for them to find out the reason behind it. Now that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So are no longer a threat, a more difficult Qing Devil has appeared. I don't think the situation is optimistic. Bali Yanche said in a low voice with a hint of worry on his handsome face. Just by looking at Qing Devil's appearance, one could tell that this guy was definitely not a low-key person. Azure Demon. Just based on this name alone, he probably wasn't a nobody in the Immortal region. If he went to the Immortal realm, he would definitely turn the situation upside down. Hearing Bai Li Yin-che's words, everyone's heart sank. This was the problem they were most worried about now. Qing Devil must be very angry that they escaped this time. If they met again, he would try his best to kill them. They escaped this time because the illusion was destroyed. But if they met him again, it would be very difficult for them to escape. In fact, Qing Devil's strength is not very strong now. After all, he has just occupied Jun Lingxuan's body and needs some time to adapt. What's more, although his soul strength is powerful, his cultivation is based on Jun Lingxuan's cultivation. It would be great if someone could kill Azure Demon at this moment. Ling Er's pretty face had a trace of alienation and indifference, as usual. Once he develops, it will be really troublesome. Now we don't know where Qing Devil is. The only thing we can do is to pray that he will die soon. Jiang Wenyin shrugged helplessly. Just the thought of facing the Azure Demon again made him feel uncomfortable all over. Forget it. Let's take one step at a time. Di Baichen waved his hand to let everyone relax.